Hi, I'm Paul Simpson from the football club. Welcome to the Brunton Bugle.
Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Kyanite fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Adam Tiffin.
No winter wonderland on the Fylde coast for United as they slump to a miserable defeat in the rain at Blackpool. We look back on a dreadful away day for the Blues before previewing another huge clash this weekend at Brunton Park against Northampton Town.
With a pass so true to Boulder Stone and Clark's in view. There's a cross and a run. The old one too.
Well, the illuminations look nice, didn't they, Adam? I'll say that much.
Yeah, it's the first time I've been to Blackpool for a long time. It's not somebody, or somewhere rather, I plan on going to often, especially on days like that.
Yeah, it was not good to say the least, and we'll get onto it in a minute, but let's just to say that in terms of away days, it's not one I really look forward to anymore, if I'm brutally honest, especially if it's in December. Definitely not anyway. How are you doing other than that? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm alright. It's the first time, actually. I think the last time I went to Bloomfield Road was when we played our home game there, when we got flooded.
Yeovil.
I can't remember. We turned up late.
It was Yeovil in the FA
missed the
Cup.
first 20 minutes.
And it was the one where we drew the game 2-2. It wasn't a replay. It was I think it was a third round tie, actually, funny enough. Because we got Everton in the fourth round, didn't we? And at 2-2, Dan Hanford, for some reason, thought he was going to go up for a corner late on and had to be reminded to go back, that you don't need to. You don't need points or anything here. Bit of a mad one, that one. There you go. Right, we've got plenty to cover today. We're obviously going to do a bit of a post-mortem on the Blackpool game and particularly Simo's comments after the match. We'll also be looking ahead to that game against Northampton, where we'll be having a chat with the guys from the It's All Cobblers To Me podcast, and also then looking into the game ourselves. And of course, we'll be doing a news roundup, which will be coming in just a sec. But first up, I've got to remind you that our sponsors this season for the podcast are the Carlisle United Sports Club London Branch. The London Branch sponsoring us for the third season in a row, and we really appreciate their support. It's really, really fantastic in terms of helping us with hosting over the last few years. If you want to find out about the London Branch, you can go to the website, carlisle.londonbranch.org. You can join them wherever you live in the world. You don't have to live in London and the South East. And they do some fantastic stuff in terms of fundraising for the club and also arranging tickets and travel for away games for fans. So go and find out about them at their website, carlisle.londonbranch.org. Right, Adam, let's get into news. Only a few little bits to sort of cover this week, isn't there? We'll sort of bash through some of these. First one, there's a new date for the Barnsley game. Thankfully, it's in January. I think that's a relief for all of us, isn't it, really, in terms of getting players.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're a good team. So, yeah, it's going to take place on Tuesday, the 16th of January. Tickets for the original game are valid, but obviously you can get a refund if you are unable to make the new date. I imagine there'll be a few people getting refunds for that one, because a Tuesday night to Barnsley is not as easy as a Saturday afternoon, is it?
Yeah, I'll have to see whether I've got tickets for it, but I'm not sure whether I'll be able to make it. I mean, my schedule's with the work that I do isn't particularly heavy, so hopefully I'll be able to get there. But it's just getting to that area of the country is always difficult. I don't know if it's just from Carlisle, but it always seems to be, a longer journey than it feels like it needs to be.
I mean, even from, obviously I'm based in Liverpool, even from Liverpool it's a pain, to be honest, because you have to go over the M62, over the Pennines, and yeah, it's not the easiest whichever way you do it, really. You can go the bottom way via Snakes Pass, but it's not ideal either. So yeah, hopefully we'll still have a very decent following there for the first league game against them since the 1980s. We should have been covering the Barrow Reserve game this week. Unfortunately, that's been postponed. I suspect that might be down to the fact that we are so short on players at the moment. So,
well, did they not have the pitch flooded? Did they not have the game cancelled because there was a flood?
No, it was going to be at Brunton Park. The game was
right.
I think it was a case of we just didn't have enough bodies at the moment, and it's more convenient for both of us. So yeah, into the new year. Last update I heard on Wigan tickets is that we've sold over 3,000. I don't think the club have put this out or not, but someone was telling me this. About 3,200 have sold so far, and I imagine that'll pick up hopefully for a couple of good results in the next two games. You might get a few more coming down, but yeah, fantastic to have sold that money already for a Friday night game down in Wigan. It's incredible. The club have advertised a couple of jobs, haven't they, this week? I don't know, some interesting ones. Go on, sorry.
Go on. Okay. I think it's, just before we get into that, I think it's really encouraging the fact that they're, it seems now we have the ability to actually branch out, because especially from what I heard of Simo saying, you've got Chris Brunskill on the physio side, and it's Jake Blaine, isn't it, who does the analytics and things like that, who's now, according to Simo, going to be going to more towards a transfer analytical role, helping Greg Abbott, and the new person's going to be more game analytics, I think. But it's just already the impact, I think, is really positive. Just we're actually becoming a proper modern football club.
Yeah, it feels a bit strange, doesn't it? Doesn't feel quite right, does it? So yeah, there's going to be, like as we said there, there's going to be a new first team lead performance analyst, and there's going to be an assistant physio as well for the first team as well to support Chris Brunskill, which is something we've always really missed, because I look at other clubs and they always have at least 2 physios, and I always think, it doesn't look great for us when we've got one guy doing it on his own.
And I think they might have advertised for the youth team one as well.
Yes, there's a youth team one as well, definitely. I saw something advertised like this. There's about 3 or 4 jobs that have come up in the last week, I think, and it's well worth having a look if you happen to be qualified in any of those areas. Well worth trying out for. On the topic of analysis, the club have agreed a partnership with StatsBomb as well, haven't they? Which is an interesting one.
Yeah, it's something that was talked about when the Piatics first came in, and obviously now it's sort of come over the line, and it's great timing because we'll need it for January. Even though we'll have a better budget, you still need to be smart with the money you're spending, and something like that will really help with their just general recruitment, and maybe moving a bit more away from the old-fashioned style that maybe we previously had, and moving towards a more efficient style.
Yeah, absolutely, and you may be able to pick out the odd player here and there that you just don't know about, and you can find out about them there and basically try and make them into a better place to sell on. Essentially, is what you're looking to do, isn't it, for us at the end of the day?
Anybody who's watched Moneyball, this is a topic for you.
Exactly. Few other little bits. A few bits have been happening around the ground in the last few days. A bit more sprucing up. We've seen all the stuff they've done in the fan zone, which is fantastic, and some of the branding's been put around, but some more branding's been added, hasn't it, to the stand side? Some nice, sort of tall pictures, basically, of the players, isn't it? Like sort of banners that are hanging down. You see them at a lot of grounds, don't you? I know you see them on the way to Everton's ground. I've seen them, and I think Leicester as well do similar. But nice to see it.
I think they might have had some. Did they have some at Bolton?
I think so. Yes, I vaguely remember. But it just makes it look a bit more modern and a bit more forward thinking, doesn't it? And I know there's some people have been scoffing at, there's a few of them will have to come down in January sort of jokes, but
they're not going to be hard to. It's not exactly going to be a tough job to take those down. But it's the fact they've already implemented stuff like that. Again, it's just encouraging signs.
Yeah, absolutely. And anyone who wants the John Mellish banner at the end of the season, I will fight you for it. So there you go. Just a couple more little bits. I think the club and Kiosk, I think a few of us are doing a food bank collection ahead of the Northampton game. So if you're at the game, I think they're looking for food and that kind of thing for people for this Christmas. So if there's details on the official website, so go and have a look at that. And it's well worth contributing to if you can. And Kiosk have also asked you to send in your contributions for Christmas songs for the Cheltenham game. They're putting together a playlist of Christmas songs, and they're going to pick the best ones, and they're going to get played. I wonder if anyone will get caught by Whamageddon on that one. Did you hear about this with the Northampton game?
No, I don't think so.
So there's this thing, for anyone who doesn't know, there's this thing every year called Whamageddon, and the challenge is from December the 1st onwards, for as long as possible, avoid Last Christmas by Wham. Now, that's whether it's on the radio and that kind of thing. This, yeah. And in Northampton Town, the DJ at their games decided he would play it just to get 7,000 people out of the game, which incredibly cruel, and a lot of people were angry about it. But then that's the whole point. You could hear it anywhere, so I don't get why people are so wound up about it. But by then, 23rd, I think you'd all be fine by hearing it at that point. If you haven't heard it by then, you've done really well.
I rate it. Good on him.
No. Brilliant. I was really impressed with that, but there you go. So Kiosk have asked you to send some of those, and go to the Twitter feed and you can find that kind of stuff. And just one more thing before I'm talking about Kiosk. I've got to say as well that I had a little bit of cock up last week. I said Carol Mitchell instead of Carol Wilson when I was talking about the one of the board members who'd left as a result of not being voted back on. So apologies, Carol. I don't know why I did that, but I didn't have it written down, essentially. I was trying to think of it off the top of my head, and where I've pulled Carol Mitchell for, I don't know. So Carol Wilson, apologies. There's a correction. Right. Let's talk about the Blackpool game then, Adam.
Do we have to?
It's the second week in a row I've said that.
Well, we can start on the good build-up to the game, because before the game I was in good spirits.
Yeah.
But then as soon as I left the pub and the wind was blowing me into the sea, things got worse.
It was a pretty dreadful day out all round, really, wasn't it, in terms of the conditions and everything. I think the couple of hours in the pub before, a lot of people seemed to enjoy. Some enjoyed it a bit more than others, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But yeah, it seemed quite... There was a boisterous atmosphere, but I think once everyone got to the ground and realised where you sat and, the stand that's there and the tiny concourse, I think the mood felt a little bit flatter, I think, when I got into the ground. I don't know what you felt like.
No, I agree. It was just the walk from the pub to the ground. You're having to walk at a 45-degree angle just to move forwards, and then by the time you got to the ground, I don't know about you, but because we went to Blackpool South rather than Blackpool North to go back, and the steward sent us out one way, and then we got to the end of the street, and the police said, "Oh no, you've got to go back round." And basically do a whole loop to go back to Blackpool South. Just the whole experience of getting to and from the ground was a nightmare, especially with the weather.
Yeah, after the game was not particularly great, although I'll talk about that later. But yeah, I think in terms of getting to the ground, we went to the hotel court, the pub called the Bridge, which is sort of on the road towards the Manchester, I think it was, because Johnny was with, who you'll hear from shortly. He had a bit of a dodgy knee, so we didn't really want to walk too far. So we went in there, and it was a Carlisle pub basically for the day, and there was a lot of people there. It was good, but when we walked to the ground, we needed to go back to the car to get something out of because we were parked in the car park right behind the Blackpool's main stand, and the police originally weren't going to let us go free. We're like, "Look, mate, we don't want to walk the long way around. We've got to." My mate's trying to get to the car. We're not going to cause any bother. He's like, as long as you don't go down this road towards that's the main Blackpool pub, and the route we were going to take was going to go nowhere near there anyway, so it's kind of like, yeah, that's fine, we're not going to do that. But the police seemed very concerned about bother that I didn't see anything at all that looked like it was. No, I didn't either.
Maybe Carlisle have been handed quite a few, warnings and stuff like that, so maybe they were just taking that at face value. But yeah, I don't think there was any bad interactions between the two fan bases.
I know there was an issue with them against Burnley, wasn't there? Was it last season, I think? So, that poor guy who died, didn't he, I think? So that might be why they tightened things up a little bit. But it did seem a little bit over the top at times, but, that's their prerogative, I guess. Well, let's talk about the game itself then. I know if we have to and all that, but when the team was announced, I heard this team leaked. Someone told me about it on the Friday. And I was a bit taken aback when I saw it. I was like, oh, that's a little bit surprising. And it was the team that the person said it was going to be. What did you think when you saw that at 2 o'clock?
I was sort of mixed. I was happy that Robinson started because I thought he deserved to.
Yeah.
But I didn't really know how to feel about it. I could see, obviously, the way we were going to set up was pretty clear with that back five and just sort of try and stay in the game for as long as possible. Obviously, that plan was thrown out the window by a mistake we'll get onto. But yeah, I was just sort of... I wasn't inspired at all by the team. I looked at it and I didn't think we could have a chance of winning here.
Yeah, my feeling was we were always going to try and keep it tight and try and hit them on the break if we could. But we'll talk about the conditions later because that played a huge part in this game. I don't think I've seen football played in conditions as bad as that for quite a while. Actually, it was horrendous enough in the stand, but when we got out there after the game and walking back to the car and you felt it out in the open, you're like, it can't have been fun to be on that pitch. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, the changes obviously were McCalmont coming in, which didn't surprise me too much. I suppose I wasn't surprised by Plange being in, but I was probably a little bit disappointed. I thought we might change it up a little bit, then do something different, but that's the way it was. Gibson being left out was a little bit surprised. Obviously, we found out later he was ill, so there was an explanation for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and obviously Jack Armour rested. I get what you said about Robinson, and I think actually giving Armour a rest maybe isn't the worst thing in the world. That must be the first game he's missed where he's not been suspended or injured or not started for quite a while, for about 2 years, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if it might have been the game after where you got the other game that he got the suspension, where they were saying about the streak of him starting like every single game for however long or however many games straight. But this must be the first time where it wasn't a suspension or injury related one. Yeah,
I think it was like Walsall, I think in 2000 or 2022, I think it was maybe. That was in April 2020. I think it's round about then anyway, so it's quite a long streak of starts, really. So, maybe just that little bit of rest maybe is a good thing for him. Onto the game itself. I thought the first 20 minutes or so was quite tight, actually, and we didn't look like we were threatening, but we didn't look like we were under pressure too much, other than set pieces, which looked quite dangerous. And then came the goal, and it's a bit of a calamitous one. And look, I'll always defend Holy as much as I can because I really like him and he's a good keeper, but it's hard to defend him on this one. In real time, I did wonder if he'd been nudged, but having watched it back, there's not enough contact there for him to be worried. And if there is enough contact, you've got to throw yourself down and try and win the free kick. You've got to be realistic on this. You can't expect a slight nudge and step back and you're going to get the decision. As it was a high looping ball that really did catch the wind coming into the box. Holy comes to try and claim it. There's ever such a slight nudge from the attack. I mean, nothing worth writing home about. Drops the ball, and to be fair to the Lions, he reacts really well and spots he's off his line, and to be able to lob a 6'9" keeper from there and put it in the back of the net was pretty impressive. What I'll say is, actually, having watched it back, Adam, I think Josh Emmanuel can do a little bit better on this as well. I think he's far too slow to react and close down Lions, and Lions has the time to take the touch and put it over Holy.
Yeah, I can't remember from my first memory of what I can think back from the game. My first thought was that it was actually Ben Barkley who'd reacted slowly, but I knew it was someone after Holy had made the mistake. It just seemed like they didn't really understand the gravity of the situation. Usually, like, if a keeper's off the line, there's a big scramble to try and defend it. They seemed very sort of laid back about it, but not understanding quite how far out of his goal Holy was, or the threat that was being posed. But yeah, it's with his height and his frame, I can't excuse that, because he should be, even if there is contact, you have the license as a keeper to go up strong, and you're usually going to get the call. If you go up strong and you come falling down, the referee's probably going to give it. He sort of half went for it, like realised it was maybe been caught in the wind, and there just wasn't a full commitment there from him to try and get the ball, and that's ultimately, in my opinion, what led to us losing it. Yeah,
I'm just watching it back on YouTube now as you talk, and I think the problem is he's worried about hitting Barkley, actually. Sorry, I think he as he comes out, he's a bit concerned about catching Barkley, and there's a slight arm across him by Rhodes, but it is not anywhere near worth a foul.
You've got to just take the man out. If you're a keeper, you have that licence to go with a knee up if needs be and claim the ball high, or at least get a touch on it. Especially for someone of his size, he should just be barrelling through people. I mean, I know he's not the only one to blame for the performance, but it really threw all the plans out the window, because from there on, as you look at that team, I mean, the fact that we didn't have a shot till, the 75th minute was evident. As soon as we went 1-0 down with that team, it just wasn't going to be enough to create anything.
No, absolutely. It was pretty clear from that point. Blackpool, they didn't really have that many more chances in the first half from memory, I don't think. I think that's the only clear-cut one I can think of.
I don't think they really created much, to be honest. I mean,
there was a couple of really good
goal,
like I say, there's a couple of really good whipped-in corners in the first half, actually.
Yeah.
To be fair, but that's
to be fair, honestly, my mind, thank God, has just almost erased most of that game. I can only really remember the goals. So I don't really remember too many of the really effective crosses, but in open play, I don't think they were that effective. I wasn't particularly worried about them creating chances. It was, again, poor defending.
Us doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It was us giving, and it's been the case all year, giving up chances where there can be avoided. It's not like we're being played off the park. If we go to Blackpool and they just absolutely destroy us, because I mean, you could tell they had a better team from the out. It was evident. It was so clear. But that should be expected. And if you're going to get beat by a team, you'd rather it be because they showed that they were better and not because you've let them into the game and just allowed them to control the game. Yeah.
Well, let's get into the second half and Jordan Rhodes' goal, then his first goal. I've seen a few people blaming Hole for this one. I don't think there's a huge amount more he could have done, really. It's a whipped-in cross from the left. I think it's Beasley gets the header towards goal, and he hasn't really got time to do anything other than react and make a save, and the ball just hits Rhodes and goes in, doesn't it? there's no time at all to really do anything. But that's what a good striker like Rose does. He gets himself in a position where he can pick up that piece when the ball comes loose.
Yeah, and it's what we sort of have it in Garner. He's got those instincts, but he's not necessarily. He's not the level that Jordan Rhodes is. I mean, he's what a great move that has been for them, getting him on loan from Huddersfield. At the time, I didn't even really realise it was sort of. I don't know about you, but I felt our fans had a bit of a delayed reaction to it because we were just like, has that actually just gone in? Like, it didn't seem like there was a goal coming, and it just sort of happened, and we were like, oh, right, we're 2-0 down. The
problem from the angle we were in, the view from that stand was not great. There was quite a lot of posts in it. There was also the camera gantry seemed to block a little bit of the view as well. Yeah. And
I found it amazing that gantry and all the media bit was like with us.
Yeah, it's weird. I think they had to do it for the Premier League because that's the only way they could get enough in there, possibly. But because I was actually that Yeovil game. I was in the press box for the FA Cup when we played there, and yeah, it wasn't the most pleasant of places to watch in the game. But yeah, the view wasn't great essentially, and I was similar. I was like, oh, it's gone in, and I did wonder at first because there was a suggestion from someone that Holy had spilled it into the net first time, but actually, when you watch it back, you can see he makes a smart save, but Rhodes is just Johnny on the spot. Thank you very much, and puts it into the back of the net. So it was just at that point. There was part of me thinking I should probably just leave now because we're not going to get into this. This is not particularly great.
Yeah, to be honest with you, I didn't see the final goal.
Neither did I.
Me and my mates were back to the thing, so I didn't see it. We heard the reaction as we were being looped around Bloomfield Road by the incompetent stewards. To be honest,
yes, but yeah. So the third,
it's just a dreary. There's nothing positive to take from that game at all, and it was just compounded by what happened afterwards.
Yeah, and the third goal, as you mentioned there, bit of icing on the cake. It was a counter-attack as United were pushing to try and get at least a goal back in the game. And Lavelle actually did quite well initially to deny CJ Hamilton with a good tackle, and then Barkley he's attempted to control the ball and he was just robbed of it. And I've heard someone blaming Holy for this. I think Holy makes a really good stop on Joseph, and there's not much he can do when the loose ball comes to Rhodes, and it's a hell of a finish, to be fair, once he gets it onto his, I think it was on his left foot, wasn't he? He just smashed it into the top corner, and didn't really make any difference on the game,
exactly.
Does it really? So there's not really too much to worry about. United's only real decent chance was for McCalman, and actually it was a good bit of play by Jack Armour on the left. Nice little nutmeg through the defender's legs into the box, and it's an absolutely perfect ball across the 6-yard box. He's got to score this, surely.
Oh, absolutely. The build-up play was reminiscent to Lavelle's goal, where Armour was on that left-hand side, because I don't think he cleanly nutmegged the Blackpool player. I can't remember who it was for Blackpool. Yeah. I think there was a little bit of a ricochet off of the Blackpool player, which played it a little bit wide, and they got the ball in. But there's 90% of the ball, which if he makes any contact with it, it's on target and it's in.
He's got under the ball,
10%. Yeah. But I don't understand how, because it's not like he's had time to, react to it. It's just sort of instinct. And the instinct wouldn't be to, get under it. It'd just be to sort of stab at it. Would it have made a difference? Who knows? I think there was a little bit of momentum then, but...
You can always ride them back, can't you? And Blackpool might change it. I mean, we had the wind. Blackpool had the wind behind them in the first half, and they really, really pinned us in with that. They didn't create too many chances, but they didn't let us out of our half for long periods. Second half was probably more us, but still more balanced than the first half was in that sense. So, we just to be honest, we could still be playing now and we wouldn't have scored. That's the kind of game it was, and that's happened a little bit too often this season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We'll talk about what a miserable away day it was first, but just one of the points I've put in here, and it's actually one of the last bullet points I've got in here. How badly do you think we're missing Callum Guy in recent weeks? And actually Paul Huntington as well, in terms of experience and a bit of leadership in there. Because with Guy, I like McGeek. He looks an okay, tidy little player, but he doesn't offer the same as Callum Guy for me. And what Guy was offering us in terms of screening the defence, from midfield, we don't have anyone who can do that. And he was keeping us in the tight games, I feel. And I feel like come January, we really need to replace him as much as we do getting an attacker in.
Yeah, it's situations where we'd potentially lose the ball high up the pitch and teams would be breaking on us and he'd be sat a bit deeper and he'd be that firefighter at the back just to, get rid of all the danger and then we can reset and, it gets the crowd up a bit because he makes a good challenge. McGeoch just doesn't he's not that sort of player.
Yeah.
And it's one of those where now we really will appreciate Callum Guy, especially when he comes back. Hopefully, if he can come back to his former self, it's a bad injury, so you have to be careful with those. But yeah, we're really missing him, and he's a tough one to replace because it's the dilemma of, do you bring in someone who's like him, and then in the summer potentially, if it's a permanent one at least, you've got two of the same player, and then they've got a battle for positions. So obviously we have that luxury potentially, but it's a tricky one for them to decide on.
I think they need to, and I think that there's your challenge for Callum.
I'd agree.
Back. You've got to try and fight your way back into the team ahead of him.
No,
it takes a bit of pressure. You don't have to rush him. I think Simmer's made this point, hasn't he, that some players come back early from ACLs and then they have other problems. So he says, I don't want to do this with Callum, which suggests to me it might be closer to 10 months that he comes back rather than 8 or 9, maybe just to make sure he's done properly. As much as anything.
Well, that's sensible. And they've been cautious with, I think that's one thing they've learned from last year, the amount of injuries. They've been cautious with a lot of people. And the good thing is there's been good news around the injuries with Coyote's going to be back to full training, and so is Hunts and Taylor Charters. I know Jack Ellis would have played in that Barrow game had it have gone ahead. So things are getting better.
Yeah,
because they can't get much worse.
They certainly can't. They certainly can't. I mean, you mentioned Hunts there. I mentioned him just there before as well. Do you think we're maybe missing him at the back a little bit? I know some people weren't convinced by his performance this season sometimes, but for me, I feel like these last couple of games we might not have got the battering with someone with his sort of leadership there to sort of guide us through a little bit. I'm not sure you quite get that with Barkley and Lavelle and Mellish.
Yeah, I mean, I'd still say Lavelle is a good leader and a worthy captain, especially of the current group when Hunts isn't there. But yeah, I think Hunts at the start of the season, because maybe we didn't quite realise how deep of a battle we'd be in, we thought he might not be good enough, but we realise now having someone like him will probably be a big boost. And it's just more options again, just to be able to, if we want to put Mellish into midfield, I don't want to see it, but if Simo does want to do that, you can have Huntington and still play a back three. So it's more options. He's a great experienced player, and he's from Carlisle. He's always going to be highly committed to the job.
I think I'll look over Christmas as well, those fixtures coming up. I think he could be quite vital in some of those, actually, especially I look at that game at Wigan, where we're going to be taking, going to be a big crowd, we're taking 3 fouls, and I think someone like him in that game could make a real difference, I think, to the team. What else we talk about? I mean, I'll tell you what, actually, I'm going to play the 6-second review that Johnny's done for us. So I went to the game with Johnny, so Johnny's going to tell a little bit of the tale of our day. There might not be much talking about the game in this 6-second review because we don't really want to talk about too much. So here's what Johnny had to say about the trip to Blackpool.
So 60-second review of Blackpool. Day started off a bit to be honest, when I inadvertently smashed Lee's car windscreen. So we had to go in my car. Got to Blackpool very late, went to a pub. Pub was alright, but the pints of Guinness were absolutely shit. Didn't let it rest, pulled the whole pint in a plastic cup. Shit. Went to the football. The weather was, that was shit. The football was shit. Came out the ground. The car was parked about 50 yards from the exit, but we were directed by the police to walk around probably about a mile to get back to the car. That was shit because I was on crutches and I had a sore knee. Went down the illuminations. Remember those being great when I was a kid. That was probably about the only thing that was shitter than the football. Anyway, finally got to Coral Island. Ghost train, shit. Pirate Flyer, that was brilliant. Thoroughly enjoyed that. 2 fat lads on, wobbling around all over the place. Lovely fun. 2 pence machines were good. Bingo was good. Then we went for a lovely fish and chips and off we went home. I can only describe the day as very mixed. And yeah, on to this week. Hopefully it'll be better.
There you go. I mean, that's a quite comprehensive roundup of the day. Yes, Johnny did Smashed is exaggerated, but he cracked my windscreen by accident, and it wasn't his fault, to be fair. I would have done exactly the same mistake as him. It was putting a windscreen wiper down that didn't have a windscreen wiper blade on it, because it blew off on the Runcorn Bridge as I was driving to his. So that just sums up the day we had. I had to drive his car, and I've got an automatic car, Adam, and he's got a manual. And I haven't driven a manual in about 2 or 3 years now. And it took some getting used to. It was a juddery start to the journey, let's just say. So
I don't know about you, but I counted 7 shites in that 60-second review, and I think that's probably a record.
It probably is, yeah. I'll challenge anyone else if they want. Hopefully, no one else will be able to do that for the rest of the season, and things will be a bit better. But yeah, it was not the greatest. I mean, as you mentioned there, leaving the ground, that was just like ridiculous. Like, literally would not let us turn right. They said, "Oh, we want to avoid the flashpoint." It's like, mate, he's on crutches. We're not going to fight anybody. Our car is parked around the main stand, and that'll take us 5 minutes max to walk around that way. Going the other way, it took us about 20-25 minutes to get back to the car. It was just ridiculous. So, yeah, it's one of those away days, Blackpool. Quite frankly, unless it's in August or May or there's something riding on it, I probably won't do again for a while. It didn't appeal to me. That concourse was ridiculous. To have that for 2,000 fans in. Yeah, I'm kind of glad. I'm kind of glad we only had 2,000 tickets, because any more would have been a joke in that area. It just wouldn't be.
Oh, definitely. I don't know if it was the same in the pub you were in, but in the Manchester, which I'm sure will be fondly remembered by many Carlisle fans. But they were also serving Guinness in the plastic cups. But it was the Carling ones that I first saw at the World Cup this year, like the Carling ones with the big handles on them. Oh yeah. Which I think maybe tops the generic plastic cups in terms of inappropriateness. All the Guinness drinkers will have been, steam coming out of their head and
absolutely raging. Yeah, it was the Manchester. They seem to be playing a lot the tunes the Carlisle fans wanted, and the Bugle theme tune got a bit of a play as well. So yes. It's looking good where Carlisle United is the song, but that got a little bit of a play as well, which is nice to see. Did you witness the upcoming the big fight outside the entrance as well? I
didn't. But when I was listening to it, I can't remember what song is being played inside, but I do remember. I remember that song being played, and it's just a funny thought, the fact that he's swung himself into a pirouette outside trying to fight the bouncers, whatever the lad. I don't know what the lad's called. I didn't recognise him or any of the lads he was with, but
I'm not going to name him. He was up on. I think he was on social media chatting about it. It's a bit embarrassing that he was enjoying it, to be honest, because he looked a bit of a tit. Let's be brutally honest here, and I'm not going to go into the details of stuff like this on the pod here, but there is an issue with a certain thing, I think, at Carlisle games at the moment, and I think it's something that I'd like to see nipped in the bud, if I'm brutally honest, because it's kind of creeping in a little bit too much. But I think people can probably work out what I'm talking about there. Let's just leave that at that. We mentioned it before, the conditions were awful for this game, though, weren't they? I mean, I think before the game, the wind was bad, but by the time we left at the end and had to walk around the ground, we were getting blown all over the place. It was awful. So there's taking corners took ages, didn't it? Because the ball kept blowing out the quadrant.
Yeah.
Every time. So look, it's the same for both teams, I get that, but Blackpool made much better fist of it in the first half, didn't they? So by the time they got into the second half and got the second goal, they were quite comfortable.
Well, they'll be a bit more used to it, but even still, I think it's just that probably just also comes down to. I know people maybe argue that conditions can be a bit of a leveller in football, but we found out that it can completely flatten a team as well who's not very good. So, I don't think conditions can be blamed, like you said, because both teams are being faced. It just made it even more horrible.
We just didn't adapt to it. That's a simple fact, really. We really didn't. Well, let's talk about Simo's post-match comments then, because this caused quite a bit of consternation, didn't it? I think it's fair to say. He said on the radio, which I'm going to bleep out now, so I don't know why I've said that. No one's going to actually hear what he said, but he used that phrase. He said "f off," which I won't bleep out because I'm not saying the word there. Obviously, he didn't tell James to F off. That would have been a bit rude, wouldn't it?
Imagine that.
Yeah, no. So basically, Simo wasn't happy about the reaction of the fans in the game. Now, both me and you are unaware of this reaction because we left the games early, didn't we? So we're not 100% certain. But from the people I've spoken to who are still at the game, they said what happened was the team came over and I think the players were getting the abuse rather than Simpson. Not saying that's right, but it wasn't Simpson directly. But because Simpson was with them, it's going to give the impression that it's Simpson getting the abuse. But the problem is it's hard to differentiate when the two of them are walking together, isn't it? So
yeah. I was listening to Chris Lumsden on the Carl Social, who was saying, as a player, obviously when you're in the stands, you're in a big group, so it's you maybe don't think that players can see you individually, but he was saying that it's so easy to spot something like that, and if there's one person that's looking at you, and then you see other people around them doing the same sort of abusive stuff, then it's completely within Simo's rights to think that that's being directed at him, and if that was being directed at him, it's horrendous because it's
Ridiculous.
people who don't understand what he's done for this club. It's people who maybe this is maybe a bit of a harsh statement because there might have been some people who were just genuinely angry, but that sort of behaviour I'd relate to people who maybe started supporting Carlisle in about April or May of this year, who don't really understand exactly what journey we've been on with Simo and how much he's done.
The thing is, everyone who went to that game supposedly had a season ticket. Okay, now that's not going to be the case because people help their mates out, don't they? So you can use my season ticket. But I think there was a decent chunk of people there who were not season ticket holders, but got their mates sorted them out. I kind of feel like.
Well, the problem is because, and I also heard Lummy talking about this, was the fact that people at Blackpool were saying, "Oh, we've got these brilliant new turnstiles, we don't have to have someone manning them." But the problem was, if you scanned a ticket, two you could fit through. So it didn't matter whether you had a ticket or not. We could have probably brought 4,000 if we wanted to.
To be honest, I didn't go through the turnstiles well because of Johnny's dodgy knee. They let us go through the gate because it would have been too difficult for him to get through. So I didn't see those. So they're very interesting that. But yeah, I can get Simo's anger about this. I really can. I think he was clearly furious. I think he knows exactly what he was doing with that interview. I think he wasn't happy about the performance, but I think he also understands that the players are probably playing at their maximum at the moment. There is a lack of effort. I 100% agree with him on that. There isn't really a lack of effort. I think they're devoid of confidence as much as anything. And I think he's like, right, I can take a bit of the heat off him here. And he's basically, all the attention's been on what he said. And, that comment at the end in response to James's question about, because he said, I don't need that in my life. And then he said, I'm not going to answer that question about whether he'd walk away if it happened again. It's got exactly the reaction he wanted and exactly the right reaction as well. And what you'll probably see at the weekend, Adam, I think, at the game, is that you'll see the crowd really behind Simo and the team for this match. And that's exactly what we need right now.
Yeah. He wouldn't surprise me if before the game he sort of gave it big to the Warwick or something like that before the game, just to try and lift it a bit. Like you said, he's a smart guy. He knows what he's doing. Yeah. I do think I'd be amazed if he was genuinely considering. Obviously, James Phillips asked him, if this was to continue, would you leave? And he didn't answer the question, sort of leaving that hint in people's minds, thinking, "Oh God, what if he was to leave?" I don't think he would have. I think that's just him being clever. But I think he was genuinely angry with what was going on.
I think emotions were very high after the game, and I get that. And that happens, especially after a game like that. And you stood in miserable conditions. It's his former club as well, and they haven't performed, and the fans have got annoyed. And he also made a comment about the reaction to Luke Plange's substitution. Adam, what was your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I've got a bit of a theory on this Luke Plange situation. Firstly, before I get into it, I get where he's coming from. Is Plange 21?
2021, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, and supposedly when he heard that, you could see his body language just drop, and that's something that will really, really hurt a player, especially when they're not in good form. And I can understand why Simpson is frustrated with that, but he keeps picking him, and he's not playing well. So what other reaction are the fans supposed to? I get, you should back your players, but to what point? To what point should we look at him and keep clapping him off when he's not been effective? And there's potentially other options on the bench that could have been better. At least in our opinion, could have been better. Simo knows a lot more football than I do, but I'm allowed to have my opinion and think Luke Plange has been shit for a while now. So I think he sort of brought it on himself a little bit.
I agree with you. I think you're right on that. I think I agree. I don't think a reaction like that is good for a young player. I'll just check that he turned 21 in November, so he's still a really young lad. He burst onto the scene quite young at Derby.
Me.
Yeah. So Yeah, it's
And I know how I'd feel if I was in that situation, and this is all well and good of me to say, but to me that could also serve as a motivator to prove us wrong. Show that you are actually what we think you could be and what all the people... And I know, I think Mike mentioned about the fact that he'd heard that people say in training he's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Was that on the... Am I right in saying
yeah.
that was on
I'm
the
pretty
last
sure.
podcast?
Yeah, I think he said that. Yeah,
I think he said something about that, and he probably gets picked because of that reason. But he's not paid to be good in training; he's paid to be good on the pitch. So, it's just going to get worse and worse if he keeps on picking him. In my opinion, if he gets extended, there could be.
I can't see that happening. It's. I just feel like we're trying to get... There's been a lot of talk, some people suggesting that we have to pick him because otherwise the penalty for not picking him is we have to pay a much bigger chunk of his wages. I'm not 100% convinced on that one. For a half season loan especially. No.
My theory somewhat relates to that. And this is my hope. I think that because we've seen what happens with bigger clubs, if their players not getting played by a team like Carlisle, they'll either get recalled and then you've got a bad relationship with that club, and in the future it's just going to handicap you. So I think he's getting played so we can bring in someone from Palace in January to replace him who is going to be good. That's my hope at least. Someone like, I don't think it'll be Scott Banks because I think his contract's not been sorted out yet and it is out at the end of the season, so they wouldn't send him on loan.
Is he at St. Pauli, isn't he, I think? Or is he, I can't know if he's
no, he might be actually, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure he's playing for them or not.
But my hope is, and this is a little hint to the content that I'll be doing as it relates to potential transfers, I hope that they will playing him to be able to say to Palace, right, look, we've done you a favour here, we've given him as much an opportunity as possible. Can we please have Ademola Ola Adebomi? Because he looks to be an amazing player and he's massive and he's got a really good touch. I'm hoping that's the case, and it's my only reason to think that, to justify why Plange keeps playing.
What's the name of that lad you said there? Sorry,
Ademola Ola Adebomi.
Oh, there you go. I've found him now. Yeah, I'd not heard of him before. Oh, interesting. He's another one. It's at Palace. I just checked with Scott about Scott Banks there. He only played 3 games for St. Pauli and he did his ACL. So that's poor buggers. His season's over in the Zweite Bundesliga.
He's gone to St. Pauli.
Yeah, it's one of those ones. It was a very weird transfer when you saw it. It was like, wow, that came out of nowhere. Yeah, the league plans. It's interesting you say that his body language changed when he came off. I think that's part of the problem.
They'd heard, I think.
Yeah.
I think that's what James Phillips had heard.
I think that's part of his problem, though. His body language on the pitch is not great either when he's actually playing.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't help as well when he's playing alongside Joe Garner, and Joe will throw himself at anything. He'll quite happily take the knocks and the elbows and the kicks and stuff like that. Plange doesn't look like he's up for that. He should be looking alongside him and looking at Garner and saying, right, this lad's had a 15, 16-year career throughout the Football League, played in Rangers, played in Europe and things like that. I should be aiming to try and do similar to him and work on my game and try and get myself up to that level again. That's what he should be doing.
And I think that's where the people's problem is with Ryan Edmondson not getting picked, because he at least, and I can strongly make the case that he is a bit of a passion merchant at times. He wins a corner, throws his arms up in the air, and that's how he's making a living at the moment. But he at least brings that energy and that work rate, which I think Plange could have. Like, he does try and press, he just doesn't do it intelligently. And then I think when he gets played round him, that's when he just sort of starts to give up a bit, and that's when it goes flat, and that's why people are turning against him.
I mean, he was barely in the game in the first half. That probably didn't help things either. So he barely involved. At least Garner was, put himself about and won a few headers and caused some problems. And then at the start of the second half, we got that quick. We started brightly, and he got that ball on the left, didn't he? And Robinson was away, and he was clean away down the wing, and he messed up a simple pass. And for me, as soon as that happened, I kind of feel like Simpson should be right. I'm going to give him 5 minutes here, and then he's coming off, because he didn't look up for it. And that's part of the problem, really, when he plays. And you don't want to dig out a young player, but Is he as bad as an Elias Sorensen? Probably not, no. But in comparison, like a Brad Young, at least with a Brad Young, there was a bit of running there and a bit of willingness.
Yeah.
And I'm not seeing that at the moment.
Is it worth Simpson keeps on playing him in the hope that he'll eventually click in games, with the risk of potentially his, confidence is going to get lower and lower and fans are going to turn on him more and more? I know managers shouldn't, probably in general shouldn't listen to a fan base, or not. That's the wrong way to put it, but they shouldn't listen to them on tactical things maybe, because they're the manager and they should have their vision, and that's what they've been employed to do. Yeah. But is it really worth keeping on putting him in there and him keeping on playing bad in the hopes that it'll click for potentially what could be 2 weeks worth of football?
Yeah. Well, for me as well, the way I look at it is that his best performance for us was against Wigan, and he came on as a sub in that game. Why not try using him as a sub a bit more often later on in games? That might work a bit better. Other bits to talk about from the game. Jack Robinson, I thought he had a fairly decent game, and obviously he moved into midfield later on to replace Moxon, who had to come off with an injury that we'll talk about in a sec. But potential option there, maybe try Robinson in midfield. Simo seems to be really impressed with Robinson and his attitude, and I think he said he felt he deserved the chance. He'd been patient, and actually, I think he sort of mentioned, didn't he, that technically he didn't look out of place in midfield. He looked quite good on the ball, and because he sometimes can stick a fullback kind of player or wing back player into the middle, and they're struggling with it because the way they play is very linear, running up and down the line. Whereas he looked quite comfortable in that role, didn't he?
Yeah, I feel like I have free reign to say this because I do, when I occasionally play 11-a-side football, I do play fullback, but fullbacks play fullback because they're not quick enough to be a winger and they're not spatially aware enough to play in central midfield. But Robertson actually looked all right in midfield when he moved into that position, and I've been pleasantly surprised with him since he's come into the team. Obviously got the assist for Planger's goal at Reading. I thought he was, like I said, most of the Blackpool games have been thankfully wiped from my memory, but I don't remember him ever, doing anything that was like really got the crowd angry or anything. I think he deserves to keep his starting spot, whether that's in central midfield with Moxon's injury. That's probably quite likely. And then obviously you've got the option of Armour on the left. But yeah, I don't see why he should not be in the starting 11 on Saturday. No,
I think he's given himself a good chance at the very least. Jordan Gibson was great when he came on again, wasn't he? I think that kind of shows like he's pretty much should be a guaranteed start right now. I know the reasons why he wasn't picked because of his illness this week, but he looked. We had a creative outlet the second he came on, didn't we?
Well, that's the thing. And this is one of the issues I'm going to try and address in the sort of scouting content that I'm going to do ahead of January, is that without Gibson, there's nobody when we win the ball back in at the back to then transition forwards. He's the only one who seemed capable of carrying, because Mock seems to be, he's injured now, so he might not even be playing the weekends, but he's getting caught on the ball a lot more. McGeoch doesn't really have that sort of physicality and athleteness to be able to drive with the ball, whereas Gibson has that ability to, get up the pitch quickly, and then that just relieves a bit of pressure. And you could see that, like you said, as soon as he came on. One thing I want to say, especially when him and Maguire came on, there was and Edmondson, to be fair, there was an instant change in the team's attitude in terms of going forward, who just looked 100%. More lively. And one thing that I picked up from Chris Lumsden was he was saying that the fans didn't help because, well, and he could be right saying people may be getting a bit too hammered before the game, and then by the time they got to the game, it was just a bit flat. But what did we have to chant about for 75 minutes? We didn't have a shot. We barely got out of our own half. I haven't looked at the average positions from the game. I can probably do it now, but there was nothing to go off, and it was awful weather. Like everything was against the fans in terms of if we'd have been up for that game, then we can't do any more.
No, absolutely. I'm just looking at. Our average positions, it's all quite back, whereas Blackpool are all over the pitch, and ours is very deep, especially in the opposition area. There's barely any heat map on there, so yeah, not ideal. No, I think it's a really fair assessment that Adam. It is like you say, the whole day was just very flat in the way it went, and I think it did make a difference when those three came on. What I will say is, I wish Sean Maguire would learn how to stay on side 3 or 4 times, getting caught offside after coming on, and if he just times a couple of those runs better, he's through on goal. And hopefully that'll come in a bit.
It's
of
just
time,
again, it's just that quality that we're lacking. Just before we move on, the final point I had from the sort of reaction to the game was that again, when I was listening to the Carlisle social, was Chris Lumsden saying that potentially players might want, Luke Plange to be starting because of maybe his attitude, and obviously Edmo was, if you could put it this way, disobeying the manager. He was kept moving away, things like that, moving away from the central striker position, and that was really annoying Simo. But I get his point, and he was saying fans should take this into account, but we don't know. So we can't. We have to just go off of what we see.
We can only go and see when the match still.
Exactly, and Plange just hasn't been up to it. And I think if he continues to start, then things are just going to get worse.
It's not going to do him any favours keeping starting him when he's not performing. Really, that's not going to help him in the slightest. So I think it's a really tough decision for Simo to make of the week, because he clearly rates the lad and clearly wants to give him a chance, but there's only so long you can keep persisting with that. We'll leave off talking about Owen Moxon's injury till we get into the second half when we talk ahead of the Northampton game. I think they've pretty much covered everything. The only thing I was going to add was that I do wonder if there's a level of entitlement creeping into our fans a bit. Of the, some fans are expecting the second that the three amigos left and the new owners came in, everything was going to be bright and smelling of roses and stuff. And it's not. It's going to be tough this season. I think it always was going to be tough this season, and I think there needs to be a real understanding there that we may have a few more crap results up until January, and hopefully if we can get those players in for that game against Exeter, then things can pick up from that point onwards.
Yeah, and that probably comes back to the, potentially you could make that argument about the entitlement being mostly in the people who were allegedly abusing Paul Simpson, because they might not know anything else other than Carlisle promotion, which is, most people who listen to this podcast know, it's a rarity, and it was so good, and we have to be appreciative of that, because it's going to be a long, long time probably before we get to feel something like that again.
Absolutely.
But I agree with you. It is creeping in a bit, but fortunately, but also unfortunately, we're being brought back down to earth a bit. Yeah, definitely. Right, let's just quickly run through the League One results before we go into the next part of the show. Bristol Rovers 1, Cheltenham 1. I didn't realise that Matt Taylor had taken over at Bristol Rovers. That's a very good appointment for them, isn't it? I think that's a really, really... I mean, compared against having Mr. Popular right now, Joey Barton in charge, I think that's a really good move. Someone, because have you seen the first female referee is going to officiate a Premier League game?
Yes.
I saw someone retweet the announcement saying, "There's how many holes do you reckon are in Joey Barton's door right now?" Yeah,
absolutely. But to be fair, it was Rebecca Welsh, isn't it? And she's refereed this a couple of times, and she's been excellent.
Yeah,
both times. So fair play.
Actually, I think shout out to Mike, fellow contributor to the podcast, who was saying, why are the Premier League all of a sudden getting all the plaudits for having, female officials when in the EFL, obviously it's been going on prior to them being in the, just gone from, non-league to the Premier League. We've helped them, gather that experience, and, they shouldn't just get shot off to the Premier League just because it's, good for the media. I think it should be a good referee from what we've seen. I think it should probably be up to that standard, but good point from Mike.
Yep. Burton 1, Stevenage 2. I think that game cost Dino Malmarie his job, didn't it? I think he's been sacked as a result. Against his former club as well. He wouldn't have enjoyed that. Charlton 2, Cambridge 2. Good start for Neil Harris there as Cambridge boss. Exeter 0, Port Vale 1. Exeter really struggling, aren't they? That game on the 6th of January looks quite a big game now, actually, doesn't it? It's one we'll definitely
it reflects. I mean, I know they were in good form at the start of the season, but the one that we lost to them at the start of the season at home, it's going to look worse and worse as the season goes on.
They lost Ndombe, didn't they? After that game, he went to Rotherham.
Yes,
so maybe that might
Nombe, I think it is not.
Nombe, sorry, that's the one. Ndombe, Nombe.
Yeah.
Leyton Orient 0, Derby 3. Derby's starting to pick up a bit of form now. There's another 3-0. Northampton 3. Go on.
I was going to say, I think they need to pick up points now, because it looks like if reports are to be taken as, well, not as gospel, but to be considered, then looks like Erin Cashin, I don't know if it's Aaron, it might be some Irish, but
it's an Irish name.
Aaron,
yeah.
He could be off to Brighton, and Max Bird might be off to Hull City, to his former manager Liam Rosenier. So, yeah, they could be depleted quite quickly, and Bird's out of contract anyway. So if they're going to get rid of him, they have to get rid of him now.
Well, yeah, I'm just looking there. That's fifth win in a row for Derby, so they're absolutely flying. They're into the playoff places now, so that's really good for them. Our opponents this weekend, Northampton, they beat Fleetwood 3-0 as well, so good result for them there. I've just lost my page of all the results. Oh no, there we go. Peterborough United 3, Oxford United 0. A bit of a the new boss at Oxford's had a bit of a tough start, hasn't he? You know,
yeah,
4 games, no win.
I mean, it was always going to be hard to. I know they've got a good squad, but I don't think necessarily people are going to be picking them for automatic promotion places. I think they'll probably start to level out. I still think there could be definitely in and around that playoff race, but it was always going to be tough following from Liam Manning.
Yeah, I'm just looking here. We've played all of the top 6 now, and we've managed to get 4 points out of them. No, in fact, 5 points out of them, which isn't actually that bad. It goes 3 defeats, a win, and 2 draws. So better than I expected that.
Yeah, I mean, I say this, but the Bolton game was obviously brilliant.
Yeah.
But I'd actually rather we'd lose to the top teams and beat the teams that are, if we were gonna get smashed by the teams at the top, I'd take beating teams in mid to lower table. Yeah. But obviously, getting those points like Peterborough and Bolton are ones that will stay in the memory. Yeah,
you can't pick and choose because that's the problem. Peterborough 3, Oxford United 0, as we mentioned there. Reading 1, Barnsley 3. Reading's form's dropped off since they beat us 5-1 again. Wigan 0, Lincoln 0, and Wickham 0, Shrewsbury 1. That's not a result we could have done with, really.
Wickham are really dropping down the table. They're not too... I think they're about 6 or 7 points off of us.
Yeah, I'm just looking. Yeah, they're on 22 points, so we're on 15, aren't we? So 7 points ahead, and I'm just looking form-wise. They're below us in the form table. They haven't won in the last 6, definitely. So I don't know beyond that, but yeah, not great for them. And then finally, there was a Monday night game. It was unsurprisingly picked for Sky, really, because it's the top 2, and it was Portsmouth 2, Bolton 0. Portsmouth are going to go up, aren't they? I think there's much doubt about that.
Did you see Dion Charles's miss in this game?
No, I haven't. I'm going to have to
search it now, because it's absolutely awful. If I remember correctly whilst you're searching this, if anybody hasn't seen it, I can't remember who it is for Bolton, but they have a shot and it's saved pretty well by the Portsmouth goalkeeper. And Dion Charles, very good striker. All he has to do, maybe 2 or 3 yards out, is just put it on target, and he scuffs it right at the goal inexplicably. And obviously they go on to lose 2-0.
He's tried to let the ball come across his body, hasn't he? And side foot, instead of just poking it with his left foot or poking it with his right, he's trying to side foot it into the corner when he should have just hammered it. Oh man, that's.
That was at 0-0.
Oh yeah, I've just spotted that. Wow, that's a bad miss to say the least. But there you go. Right, I think we've covered enough of the Blackpool game and what happened in League One on the weekend. So we're going to take a short break, and after the break, I will be back and I'll be speaking to Danny from the It's All Cobblers To Me podcast. He's a Northampton fan, obviously, and we talked about how they found the step up to League One this season. Bit of an update on their attempts to redevelop their ground and how important Sam Hoskin has been to them over recent years. He's almost at a decade at 6 Seals now. Quite an achievement, really. So there's a little bit on that. So yeah, after the break, we'll be back and I'll be speaking to Danny.
Hi, it's Tom Piatic II, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
Yes, welcome back after the break. It's now time for Behind Enemy Lines, where we speak to an opposition podcast about their team and how they're getting on. And it's a familiar face that we're talking to this week. It's one of the teams that are promoted with us, Northampton Town podcast. It's All Cobblers To Me, and we're speaking to Danny Brothers. Danny, how are you doing?
I'm really good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, really good. Pretty good. You know, we're all looking forward to Christmas, and I think Carl Alphonse is probably looking forward to January a little bit more.
Yeah.
But that'll be our second Christmas, I think, once we start getting a few players in. But there you go. Let's talk about life in League One then, because it's new to both of us. You guys had a bit of a sluggish start, it's probably fair to say, but you seem to have found your feet over the last month or so. So what has been the spur for that upturn in fortune for the Cobblers?
I mean, the teams we played have been a part of that, apart from Blackpool, who we wouldn't have expected a result against. We've played Burton, Cambridge and Fleetwood all at a really good time. We've been great in the games. We've been really functional and really good, and we've got the job done and got really good results. But I think we've caught them really well in terms of the way they're playing and stuff. But I don't think a lot has changed over the season. We've played pretty much the same way the entire season, fairly similar to themselves. We've been in every game we've played in. There's been one game maybe at Derby where we've got absolutely hammered in the first half and we've not looked ourselves at all. There was maybe a half against Bolton where we didn't perform at all and we went 2-0 down. We started to claw our way back in the second half and lost 2-1, but we galvanised and got something from it in terms of a performance. But for the majority, it's been tight defeats. If we have lost, it's been decent draws. We've been performing well and we've been in most games playing exactly the same way. So I don't think there's anything massively different we've been doing the last few weeks. We've had a couple of players come back that have made a big difference recently to those games. Like Jack Sowerby's been back in for the last sort of month or so, and him coming back has just allowed us to be a much better team, a better unit. Mark Leonard's been able to push forward a lot more than even he would have done last season when you saw him. Sowerby's allowed him to press on in more of a number 10 role, and it's just made the whole balance of the side so much better. Aaron McGowan's come back in at right back and filled in for John Guthrie in terms of the character at the back who you need a bit of leadership from. John Guthrie's been out. It was a major absence for a couple of games, so we noticed it dramatically in terms of play at the back. But then Aaron McGowan came back in and just provided that little bit of leadership in the Burton game that noticeably we just came together so much better. Like his know-how at the back. I mean, he's only 27, which he keeps reminding us of, but he just feels like he's been around the game for ages and for years, and he just gave us that little bit of an oomph at the back and solidified everything. And like I said, Sowerby's been crucial to it as well. He does. He'll do all the stuff that doesn't get noticed, and he allows other people to play. So all of that's just come together the last month or so, and it's just looking so much better at the minute.
I think you're right there, and there is quite a few similarities between the two clubs and all those sort of things there. You getting Sowerby back, well, we're really missing Callum Guy at the moment. That's been really noticeable, and having a player like that in your team that sometimes maybe doesn't quite get the plaudits they deserve, but they're so essential to the way they play, and it sounds like he's made a really big difference having him back. You've coped, though, generally better than United at this level so far. That's probably fair to say. And like you said, maybe it is an element of the run of games you've had and the opposition you face. But do you think another reason why maybe you've done a bit better is the fact that you were coming in to League One on the back of two promotion pushes, if you see what I mean? In that you've had that momentum over 2 seasons, whereas ours was 1 season with a bit of a stodgy end to it, whereas you've been sort of consistently up the top 3 for 2 seasons in a row now, and that momentum's really helped.
100%. I think last time we came up under Keith Curle, it was the COVID playoffs. We played to an empty Wembley and beat Exeter 4-0. It's such a surreal thing to happen, and I feel like looking at it now, we probably did come up a little bit too early in that sense, and we just fell apart as soon as we got up into League One, and we just didn't have the players to cope with it. A lot of our key players left. All of our defence pretty much got taken or loaned back and didn't come back. Players like Callum Morton didn't come back, who was really good that season, and we just weren't ready for it. And John Brady tries he might to turn around at that point. He just couldn't get us back up enough to finish above the bottom 4. But the last 2 seasons have been incredible from him. And the squad, the whole club has just come together for the last 2 seasons. It's almost the thing that happened with Bristol Rovers, which a lot of people will be familiar with in terms of them winning 7-0 on the last day and overtaking us. And that could have killed a lot of teams. That could have, really hampered a lot of teams and a lot of, characters and stuff. It could have just really harmed us the following season. We could have just been back in sort of mid-table again for that second season. But to galvanise them and to get through a lot of stuff off the pitch that a lot of people wouldn't have known about until the end of the season, when John Brady maybe spoke about it a little bit more, to see the injuries we had last season, to players playing in positions that they'd never played in before. We had Jack Sowerby playing centre-back for the last few games. We had players drafted in who hadn't played a game in English football at all for 6 months, and that's just what he got out of him. That's what Brady got out of the club, and you've probably got a similar sense with Simpson as well. He gets the most out of players, and he gets the absolute maximum out of players who you just don't expect it from. And so that season where we didn't go up and ended up losing the playoffs, it did galvanise the place a little bit, and it said to them, right, let's go again and let's do it again. It's a hard thing to do, but it has definitely, to answer your question, set us up well for League One. When we lose a game, we don't get too down about it. John Brady doesn't get too down about it. When we win a game, he doesn't get too high about it, and it's resulted in a really good mid-table season at the minute. We had a bit of a wobble October time, but for the most part, it's set us well, because defeats don't mean the end of the world, and as a fan base, it's probably the same thing. And wins, as much as you want a win to take you up into like heights of wanting the playoffs and stuff, it just hasn't done, and we're in a pretty decent place in the minute.
So, probably fair to say Brady's quite well liked by the fans. How does the job he's done compared to what Keith Curle did as manager? Because obviously Keith Curle was our manager for a few years and never quite got us into those promotion places, and we lost in the playoffs under him. And to be fair, the money we spent in that season we got in the playoffs from him crippled us for a few years essentially. So how have you guys coped with Brady instead? He seems to be pretty well liked with your fan base.
It's so well liked, yeah. It's his energy, it's his character. He'll wind opposition fans up, I'm sure you know. He'll wind opposition fans up no end with his antics on the touchline and just the passion that he shows. But he gives everything to the club, and you can tell that on and off the pitch. He'll be giving the work, he'll be putting the work in, and our fans just react to that. Any fans would react to that. You'll be the same with Simpson. You see the same with Steve Evans at Stevenage, just characters on the sidelines who will just galvanise a fan base, and he's done exactly that for us. And you all know what it's like under Keith Curle. It's not the same. It's not that. It's not his skills set to do that. And he was good up to a certain point in relating to the fans to a point. But as soon as Brady came in, it was just constant, like fireball football from the off, and it was just from the sidelines. You could tell how much he cared. And some managers aren't like that, and it's fair. It's fine, but after Curle, it's just been such a breath of fresh air, and the whole club is united again behind him. And we can't say enough good things about him at the minute.
I looked at your summer transfer activity, and I was quite surprised. Fairly quiet summer for you guys. I mean, when you consider you made 7 signings, of which 2 were loanees coming back who'd been with you previous season, so 5 new faces, and that's it. What's the sort of thinking behind that? Is it just a case of Brady looked and thought, well, actually, the squad's pretty capable and it just needs a little bit of tinkering on the edges?
Exactly that. I mean, we've been really good in the last few years of tying players down to contracts, so it wasn't a massive issue over the summer. We've tied Sam Hoskins down, Mitch Pinnock down about a year ago now to new deals. We've been topping up contracts constantly over the last couple of years mid-season, and it comes to the summer, especially last summer, where we didn't feel like we needed that much change about it. It just, I know he wants to keep a good, solid squad there. And it has to be the right character for him. Obviously, he knew Kieran Bowie. He knew what Mark Leonard would bring, and that 2 signings again have been fantastic. They've both stepped up really well this season, and the fans know what they're getting with them. Budget wise, is probably a big part of that as well. So he's got to be very clever about who he brings in. He's got to bring in the right type of character, and the people he has brought in. Patrick Bruff has slotted in really well. You'll know him quite well as well, of what he gives. I was a little bit concerned about him stepping up from Barrow and from League Two, but he's just been brilliant. It's the type of character that fans can get behind again. Like, he's not perfect, but he does a really good job on the left hand side. A couple of signings haven't quite worked. We'll come on to that later maybe, but for the most part, it's just been a case of trying to continue what we did last season and sort of build on that, and it's worked so far because the squad is pretty much the same.
And I suppose that gives you a chance in January to add to that squad and just have that extra little bit of quality to get you to kick on. Really, you've got a bit of maybe a little bit of wiggle room to do that possibly. Yeah,
hopefully, yes. Yeah, fingers crossed. We've got a little bit. I mean, we're not going to have anywhere near the budget of a lot of teams in League One, but yeah, I think there has been talk of 1 or 2. It will only be 1 or 2 tweaks, I would imagine, just to try and make sure we stay up this season.
Yeah, you mentioned Sam Hoskins and tied him down to a longer deal earlier. There, he's now one of the longest serving players in the division, isn't he? I think he's been with you guys for about is it a decade now? Possibly, I can't remember.
Coming up
to it, won't it, I think.
that, I think by the time his contract ends, it will be over a decade. Yeah, which is insane
Yeah.
in this day and age
Yeah.
for a player like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. How important is he to the way you play? Because every time I see him play against us, he always impresses me.
Yeah, it's mad. Like the last couple of seasons, he's just been insane. Brady's just got something out of him that no other manager has done. He's not been prolific in his previous seasons. When he first came in, the first few seasons, he's just constantly we spoke about him being, if he can add an end product, he will be a really good League One player. He just hadn't done it in League One before. For whatever reason, for the manager, the players around him, whatever it was. But he seems to have really kicked on just under Brady. He's got something out of him that no other manager's got out of him before in terms of killer instinct. He's confident when he goes through on goal now. You think that's a goal, whereas before you think, he's going to put that over into Rose Ed kind of thing. And he's just got that energy. He always adds the sort of the energy, the fight. He'll run through a brick wall for managers, which is why he kept getting picked. He'll play in any position that managers want him to play. Keith Curle had him at wing back at one point, left wing back at one point. I think he would have played him in goal if he could. And he'll just run through. He'll just go through a brick wall, which is the main thing that you want from a player. But now he's added that quality. At the end of it is insane what he's done, and he's now coming up to, I think he's one goal away from going up to about the top 7 all-time scorers list, which is nuts for the names that are up there. So yeah, I mean, he's just kicked on so well.
Wow, that's seriously impressive. I'll ask you about Pat Brufford, about the danger winning squad. How's he getting on with you guys? Pat was really, just before you answer, he was really lucky at Colour, and that he came through at a time when we had Danny Granger playing at left back for us, who was club captain, scored free kicks and long range goals for fun, a real leader, local lad. And he was never really ever going to get a chance ahead of him, especially under Keith Curle. So I think most Colour fans are really pleased to see how well he's done in his career, and particularly pleased that he's not now doing it at Barrow. So how's he getting on with you guys?
He's doing really well, like I say. That surprised me because he seems like the proper Keith Curle type player, doesn't he? Like, it feels like a player that Keith would just absolutely love. And he's a bit of a kind of ruffian in the goldmine kind of player. Is very different to anyone else we've got in terms of, he feels like I don't want to insult him, but by saying he feels like a League Two player in a League One side, but he is slotted in so well. He gets forward a lot. He could have had 5 or 6 goals this season already. I think he's got 1 at Exeter. But he's just puts in the effort. He's a proper John Brady player. He'll give 100% every week. I think he'll probably play at the weekend. We've had Ali Koiki in and out, but he's injured now, so he's more than likely tied down that left-hand spot for himself. So yeah, I mean, it feels like he was quite young when he was with you as well. But he
came in for our youth team. He's a local lad from Silliff on the west coast, and he actually was a winger in the youth team. He played more as a winger, really, as a left winger and sort of left forward. But he sort of broke into the first team as a left back and has been playing there pretty much since, I think. So yeah, he's a good lad, and I think there was always the expectation he could have a half decent career. Just bad luck for him that we had a player at left back who was going to go on and make 200 appearances for us, and he wasn't going to get a chance ahead of him. So it's just luck sometimes, isn't it? Let's talk about the danger men in the squad then, other than obviously the obvious ones. You mentioned Hoskins there, but who else should we keep an eye out for? McWilliams is one that always really impresses me whenever we play against you guys.
Yeah, McWilliams just come back from injury a couple of weeks ago. He's started straight back in there. He's a walking yellow cards, but he's a type of player that he needs to be up for a game. Sometimes he's not up for a game, you can tell. He lets it pass him by a little bit. The last couple of weeks have been brilliant. Up at Blackpool, did really well. Against Fleetwood, pretty much ran the game. He was dropping into a lot more advanced positions than he usually does, because Fleetwood just gave him that space to do that, and he was marauding forward a little bit. He probably won't do that away from home, I wouldn't have thought. But he's generally stepped up well again. He's played in this level before, so he does well. Mark Leonard is probably the other one. He just makes things happen. His quality on the ball is just ridiculous. You think of what Brighton are these days as on loan from Brighton, and you think of what they are, and you imagine a Brighton midfielder, and you know exactly what you're going to get. But he's just got a different level of quality, and the fear is now that somebody comes in, or Brighton want him to go to another level in January, which we hope doesn't happen. It's happened before with Keon Etete for us, and we just really hope that he does stay for the season, because he's got that such quality and calm on the ball. And he's full of a lot more energy than you'd expect from him as well. So he'll be the one that will make things happen, hopefully.
I mean, that reminds me of Jerry Yates for us, who had a brilliant first half of his season when we had him on loan, and then Rotherham were like, actually, we'll have him back for the second half of the season. Thank you very much. And then obviously they ended up loaning him out, and look at him now, he's at Swansea. That was kind of one of those frustrating ones where our former erstwhile director of football said, "Oh yeah, he's definitely tied down for the rest of the season." And then it was, in fact, it was him, Jack Sowerby, and Ashley Nedison with the free plays. Yeah, we got them tied down for the rest of the season. All three of them got recalled, which sums it up quite frankly. Before we get predictions, just want to ask you quickly, in terms of off the field, what's the latest on the issues in terms of sorting out six fields? Because I know last time we talked to you, they're hoping to get close to a resolution in terms of fixing that, but I'm guessing by your reaction there, it might still be a bit off.
It's still that. I mean, an agreement's been put in place at the moment. We've got a builder, we've got a contractor ready. The builders were there on Saturday, just randomly. So that it's getting there. There's issues with the council still to be tied up. It's a massively long story. It's another podcast in itself, but it's getting there. It won't happen probably. We probably won't see anything happen until the end of the season, at least. I wouldn't have thought, but it's on the road to getting there finally. It's been a lot of issues with stalling of it and everything like that, but hopefully within a couple of years we'll have a new stand, because it's just been rolling on for so long, but it'll just be great to have it done.
Didn't that basically bring down your council essentially?
It was part of it. There was missing millions of it. Yeah.
Wow, incredible. Before we get ourselves in any trouble, let's move on to the predictions then. What are you going to go for this weekend?
Said on our pod that we recorded with you just now 1-1. I think I'll stick with that. I think we'd be fairly happy with a point up there. Long way to go on a December afternoon, but I'll go 1-1, and just to come out of it, I think Patrick Bruff will score, and then Ryan Edmondson will get his inevitable goal against us.
Well, with any luck, because he's not been a goal scorer for this season, to put it bluntly. Danny, thanks for giving up your time to speak to us. It was always a pleasure, and all the best for the rest of the season after this weekend's game.
Pleasure, and to you. Really look forward to seeing what happens with you and your new ownership for the rest of the season. So all the best.
Hi, I'm John Halpin, and you're listening to the Brunton Bugle.
And we're back for part 3, as we do now. That's the way we're doing it. We're changing things up a little bit. Thanks once again to Danny from the It's All Cobblers To Me podcast. I had a really good chat with him. You probably by now as well be able to see the chat that I had for their podcast as well, talking about all things United. So give that a check out if you can. Really, really good podcast they do. Well, let's get into this one then, Adam. In fact, actually, no, wait, first. I just remembered Mike has set us a question for this week. So let's have Mike's question of the week.
Former Blue and former Cobbler Nicky Adams recently made his 750th career appearance. Now, how many goals has he scored in the Football League?
Oh, you know what? I don't think it's going to be as big a number as you think.
No, he was more assists. He wasn't a Nathan Thomas cut inside and score. I don't think it'll be that high. I'm thinking in the sort of 40 to 50 range.
I wonder if it might not even be that high, I feel it might be in the 30s, because I feel like he only scored, I think, 2 or 3 for us, didn't he? I think he scored a few more elsewhere. I think he might have taken penalties for a couple of teams, maybe, I don't know, but I'm going to go 37 on this. I'm not 100%, but
I'll go 42.
Right, we'll do the answer now, because it's quite a simple one, so here's the answer to the question.
And it was 39.
Oh, right in the middle of us.
Oh, you're pretty much right. I think I was slightly closer, but I'm stretching it to try and claim that as a victory.
Well, it's 3 either side. I'm not letting you take that as even as it gets.
2 from 37, 3 from 42.
Oh, I thought you said 36.
No, right, I said 37, so I'm having that one.
Right.
only just. But yeah, 39. Yeah, not as many as you'd think. Fair play. Right, well, let's talk about this one then. Adam, Northampton Town. What's your thoughts on how they've settled to life in League One? I'm trying to think back to the season preview, and I felt like they might struggle a bit because they hadn't had much transfer activity. But actually, it feels like that lack of transfer activity and that sort of balanced nature to their squad has really paid off for them, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, they really should have been in League One the year before last if it weren't for Scunthorpe and Elliot Anderson. That game. I remember coming out of Bradford and seeing the result and that, and I just could not believe that Northampton weren't going up. But yeah, they've really settled in well, especially in recent weeks. They weren't around pretty much for the whole month of October. They only had 2 wins out of 7 games, I think. 2 wins out of 7, but since then they've only lost 2 in the league, I think, maybe even less than that, and they've won pretty much. They're not really a team who seems to draw much. That's one thing I've noticed from looking at the standings.
Yeah.
2 draws in their 20 games, so I don't think that'll be a result that's on the cards. But I say that we've had 6 draws, but I think they've settled in really well, and potentially the fact that they've kept a lot of their squad could be a bit of a benefit. I know some people think that had Carlisle kept the likes of, I mean, obviously they didn't want to stay anyway, but likes of Dennis, Amari Patrick, we could have fared better just because of that continued cohesion within the team. But yeah, they've settled in really well. I think it will be a tough game.
Yeah, it interesting you mentioned that Bristol Rovers Scunthorpe game. I remember, like you, driving back from Bradford in the car, and we had 5 Live on. It was 6:06, and I think that both the what do you call it? I can't remember what the programme was. It's on 5 Live at 5 o'clock. I think it's when they do the roundup of all the games. And there was a few people saying, "Oh, it's a bit
One
of
of
a
Robbie
disgrace."
Savage on it.
Yeah, I can't remember if it's not the 6:06 bit. It's the bit before that. But anyway, they were basically saying, "Oh, it's a bit of a disgrace that they putting a load of kids out there." And I wanted to say, like, not being funny, but you guys haven't watched Scunthorpe all season. Absolutely appalling team.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
you're not even a slightly surprising result, really. Completely to be expected. What happened? So yeah, the fact that they just missed out. I said this to Danny in the chat there, obviously, that I feel it was actually a bit of a benefit for them compared to us, that we had that one season of, wow, suddenly we come from nowhere and we're fighting and we got promoted. They had 2 seasons of continued success, pretty much. They didn't
they were
really
established.
drop off at all, did they? And they kept the squad together in that time.
They were sort of like, how like Mansfield is sort of in and around it every single year. They were that, but a bit better. They were always in and around that promotion battle. And
slightly better
probably
version of
helped them.
Mansfield, aren't they?
Yeah, that's what I meant to say. But they were always in and around it. So the squad has that know-how of those times, and being one of the better teams, and a bit more of an understanding of how to control games, game manage, that sort of stuff. Where we went up quickly and maybe didn't get as much of that experience, which has probably benefited them in this year.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I'm looking at the summer recruitment now. The thing that stands out is they've signed 7 players. 2 of them are players they had on loan last season. So that, again, is that continuation of the squad. They've only lost 4, of which 2 are goalkeepers who I don't think they particularly rated Maxted at the very least. And King's gone to Wolves, which is a hell of a move for him. He's really shot up the leagues randomly. I was never that impressed with him. I was a bit surprised by that one. But yeah, obviously, when you add the other 5 in, there's a keeper on loan from Newcastle. He seems to be playing quite a few games at the moment. I think that Lee Burge is injured for them. Jordan Willis, I didn't realise that he'd signed for them. I think it was quite a recent one. And he was ex-Sunderland, wasn't he, in Coventry, I think, maybe? He's played at a higher level.
I'm not too familiar with him.
Tyrese Simpson, the guy on loan from Huddersfield, is one that we apparently tried to sign. I mean, he's one who's struggled for them. He's not made the same impact. But Patrick Brough made the move from Barrow in the summer to join Northampton, and sounds like he's really... Patrick was really unlucky with us, wasn't he? I think that's probably fair to say, that breaking through, and obviously he was a winger in the youth team, but then sort of changed to a left back when he got to the first team. Breaking through at the same time that Danny Graham pretty much signed for us. Danny Granger, I should mean, sorry. Yeah, Danny Granger signed for us. Always meant his chances going to be restricted, didn't it?
Yeah, of course. The timing probably didn't help him, but he's gone on to do well, and I think some of this, like him and Manny Monf, like Patrick Brough for a left back / left wing back, he is a big lad, and Manny Monf is an even bigger lad. So they've just sort of reinforced that back line a bit. And the one signing I think that stands out to me is Mark Leonard from Brighton.
Yeah, bringing him back, definitely.
Annoyingly Scottish, so there should logically be more of a chance of us getting him because it's closer to home. But he's been so good in the centre midfield. I think he's been probably one of the, at least according to SofaScore, their best player this season. Sitting in the middle of the park, not necessarily going to rack up goals and assists, but probably someone in a similar role to Callum Guy, who's just sort of a sweeper and does everything.
Well, he's been pushed forward a bit further forward recently. I think Jack Sowerby's come back into the team for them, another ex-Blue, obviously. And I think it's given him a bit more licence actually to get forward, and they're quite impressed with how he's done as a result. I always feel like Pat Brough's got quite a lot of similarities to Jack Armour in the way he plays. Quite a tall, rangy wing back who can get up and down and he probably has a little bit more of a goal threat than Jack does, and maybe that's something Jack can work on a bit in his game and chip in with a few more goals, because that's what you want to see from a wing back, isn't it? When you look at the rest of the squad overall, I mean, the obvious names. I mean, Danny Hilton's struggled a bit since he's gone. He's not even actually scored yet. I didn't realise that until I was looking at before the game. But Sam Hoskins and Mitch Pinnock in attack are two that really stand out for me. They're real quality players at this level, aren't they?
Yeah. And Louis Appere as well. Was it Bristol we were looking at before the Bristol game and thinking, God, could we just have one of these, please?
Yeah,
It'd make life so much easier. But yeah, they've got a. And the thing is with those names as well is they're not all the same type of player. There's differences in their qualities, which makes them harder to defend. They've not got two lump-it strikers or something like that. You've got Hoskins is more of an on-the-ball, go-at-you type player. Yeah. And then likes of Pinnock and Appere are a bit different as forwards. So, yeah, it's they've got a diverse attacking lineup, which is always hard to defend against.
And then into midfield, they've got plenty of quality in there. You obviously mentioned Leonard already. Honda Mark did pretty well for them last season as well. And I actually think was Ben Fox the one who was at Grimsby when they signed him? Is that a different Fox I'm thinking of? But obviously we know Jack. We know what Jack Sowerby can do, don't we? You know, we know he's a quality player. But Sean McWilliams,
Grimsby, yes.
Yeah, great stuff. I thought it was the same one. He was a good player for Grimsby in the National League, what I saw of him. But Sean McWilliams is someone who's always done really well against us, hasn't he, as well? He's one of those players I do look at and think to myself, we've got a bit of money to spend now. I wouldn't mind signing someone like him, because I think he would make a big difference to our midfield. Not tapping him up or anything there, but that's what I was thinking about him.
Yeah, it's just quality, and it's depth as well. There's a depth of quality in there, which in our midfield, especially at the moment with the loss of Guy and Taylor only just coming back, we just don't have that available.
Yeah, I do look. The one area I think where maybe they're maybe not quite as strong as defence. They've still got some good players in there, to be fair. But I do wonder if you could potentially get at the defence a little bit, possibly. I don't know. But I fully expect them to finish around about mid-table come the end of the season. I think they've got enough quality to keep themselves up there. And John Brady seems to be a good manager as well. That's well thought of.
Yeah, well, they've only conceded a few less. They've conceded 26 goals this season. We've conceded 29. Okay. I know we've been in a lot of games.
Yeah.
So, and obviously there was that slapping at Reading. But to think we've conceded 8 goals in our last 2 games, you know, they've not. The point sort of stands that their defence is gettable.
If you lose those 2 games 1-0 instead, I know it's buts and maybes, whatever. But if we lost those 2 games 1-0 instead of 5-1 and 3-0, we'd have the joint best defence in the bottom half of the division alongside Wigan. In fact, we'd have up until about 8th place, we would have one of the best defences, you know, outside of the top 7. If that was the case,
there's only 2 teams, Derby and Portsmouth, who've conceded less than 20 goals. Yeah. And considering we've conceded 29 and 8 of them have been in the last 2 games, you know, I don't think defence is necessarily a problem. It's just that there's so much pressure on them because we can't get out of defence that it just leads to so many opportunities for better teams.
Yeah, it's proven a bit of a problem the last few games, definitely. Just trying to think, what should we talk about now? Well, let's do the referee. It should be quite quick on this one, because it's Daniel Middleton from Derbyshire. It's his first season as an EFL referee, and he's never refereed a Carlisle game before. So he's a newbie. He's taken charge of 14 games so far this season, handing out 35 yellows and 3 red cards. And last season, 69 yellows and 7 red cards in 21 games. Head-to-head wise, it's the 48th meeting between the two sides. United have won 13, 15 have been a draw, and the Cobblers have won 19. We've only won 1 of our last 9 games against the Cobblers.
Yeah, there's 2 games in recent memory that stand out. One was the one last year where we had that run of... we played like 3 or 4 teams back-to-back, I think, who were sort of... It was like Stevenage, Northampton, Stockport were all sort of in that realm. And I think we narrowly lost to them, if I remember correctly.
I think we drew them all.
Maybe we drew.
I think we drew Northampton. Did we draw Northampton? And I'm
maybe.
11v11 up head-to-head.
Lost to Stevenage. I know that. But the other game was when we had Keith Millen in charge, and it was the season they should have got promoted, and we got slapped.
Yes.
We were so bad. So it really that stat of not 1 win in our last 9 really does not surprise me.
Yeah, it was 0-0. Remember, we had a 0-0 against Northampton and a 0-0 against Stevenage when we lost at Leighton Orient, didn't we? So it was just,
That Stevenage game just feels like a loss.
Yeah,
what was it? 48 minutes. The ball was in play.
Awful game of football. That was just terrible. But yeah, I mean, the last win was the 2-1 win just after Simo had come back a couple of weeks after. And where
I was at uni listening to that because we were on a good run.
Yeah,
and I paid £3 to listen to it on iFollow, and yeah, I've never been more excited listening to a radio commentary. But James Phillips commentating that Jordan Gibson penalty was a real moment of God. We could actually stay up here. This could actually happen.
Yeah, 100%, wasn't it? And I still can't believe Fraser Horsfall handled that ball. No idea what he was thinking when he did that. It was just insane, absolutely insane.
Well, you can see from the reaction, if I remember correctly, they were all just like there wasn't even a protest.
Yeah, it's mad. I'm looking at the last time we won after that, where Jason Kennedy and Kyle Dempsey scored in that game. So that's going back quite a bit. In fact, Paul Corrie played in that game. That's how far back it was. He actually played for both clubs, funny enough, which will bring us on quite nicely to that. Actually, now we'll do that. Play for both. Dan hasn't had time to pick one this week, so I'm going to have to pick one. Do I do Paul Corrie now? I'm not going to. Tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to do Paul Conway. Paul Conway, before your time, Adam. Very much before your time. Paul Conway was a player that we signed. He's kind of a weird one because he's American. So he's one of the first Americans to have played for us.
Which decade, if you mind me asking?
1990s. So right. He actually
started... One
started...
my dad about.
I'm sure he'll tell you that he was a good player. He was one of those players, he was a bit hit and miss with the fans. Some of our fans were a bit... For my first season of watching him, I loved him because I thought he was a really good player. He had a little bit of ability on the ball and added a little bit of guile and class to a hard-working team. He was born in Portland, in Oregon, in the United States. His dad actually was Jimmy Conway. He was an Irish midfielder. I think he played for Fulham. I'm just going to quickly check that one.
It's a very Irish name.
Yeah, he played for Bohemians in Fulham and Man City, did his dad. But he went over to Portland Timbers to play in the US, and he was born over there, and I think they stayed over there basically after that. But he actually played for Portland Timbers at the start of his career. Did Paul? He then had some time with Brooklyn Italians for one season, which was a team that, by looks of things, played in the National Premier Soccer League. It's a great
dominating force in world football.
Indeed. But then in 1993, came over for a trial, I think, at United. Played a couple of trial games, quite impressed, and ended up signing a deal for the 93-94 season. Did okay that first season, but in the second season, he was excellent in the team that won the third division title in 94 and 95. He scored 30 goals in 107 games playing. It says he's a forward on Wikipedia, if you look on that. He was a forward towards the end of his career. He was actually a midfielder for us, sort of attacking midfielder, but averaged 1 in 3 with his goals. And that season, it was fantastic. The season we got promoted, but sort of overshadowed a little bit by the likes of Reeves and Walling and Rod Thomas and people like that. He stayed until the end of the 96-97 season. He actually scored at Wembley in the penalty shootout when we beat Colchester in the what was now the Football League trophy. He left the following season to join Northampton. He only played 3 games for the Cobblers though, and then was loaned out to Scarborough, where he scored 1 goal in 13 games for them. In 1998, he left the United Kingdom to travel back to the USA and joined Charleston Battery. He's a bit of a legend at Charleston Battery. He played as a striker there, and he scored 91 goals in 198 games. Quite remarkable, isn't it? He basically spent 7 seasons with them. He basically was one of the All-Star and MVP honours in the 2001 season with them. And I think that he re-signed for Portland Timbers and played 1 season for them before they became an MLS side, and then was released at the end of that season in 2005. And he retired at that point at the age of 35. And I think last time I read, he was working as possibly as like a solicitor, I think, or a lawyer or something. I'm just going to quickly check that while we're talking. This is me doing this on the run here, but he was definitely doing something along those lines. But yeah, he's one of those players I think maybe doesn't get enough credit for how he was good. He's a lawyer, yes. I just double checked that because John Coleman did an excellent article on him. We'll put that up on our Twitter feed. Actually, you can have a little read through it. But yeah, he's. Look, he's living back in the USA now. I'm sure he's pretty happy living there rather than the UK, isn't he? So there you go. Paul Conway played for both. A fairly long list of players. I'm surprised at how many have played for both. This is not what I expected. I'm going to bash through these as quickly as possible. Obviously, we mentioned Nicky Adams already. Derek Asamoah, he had quite a decent spell with them too. David Brightwell, Patrick Brough, Peter Clark, Paul Conway, Paul Corrie, we mentioned before. Brendan Dickinson had a short spell with them too. Ryan Edmondson, I don't think his loan spell there wasn't that successful from what I remember. Paul Fitzpatrick, there's one for the early 90s fans. Chris Freestone, now there's a name that will send a shiver down the spine of a lot of fans. He had a loan spell for Middlesbrough and he wasn't great, to put it bluntly. Bob Hatton, Warren Hawke, Carl Hawley, he was I think he was on loan there from before us possibly, I seem to remember. I might have made that up, but I'm sure he was there quite early in his career. Carl Heggs, Hallam Hope, Evan Horwood, Kelvin Langmead, Frank Large, Lee Madison, Ben Marshall, Rod McDonald, Sean McGinty, the 1 minute wonder, Paul McGregor. I think if Dan had been able to pick it, he would have picked Paul McGregor 100%. I'll get him to confirm this obviously once we've the episode's out, but I'm 100% certain he would have wanted to talk about Paul McGregor. Paul McGregor was on loan from Forest in the late 90s, Adam, and he's famous because he had this long sort of blonde mullet hairdo. But he was he was a proper quality player, really, really good player. We wanted to try and get him permanently, but we couldn't. He went back to Forest and his career he went to Plymouth and then his career petered out because he wanted to be an indie rock star. And he's got his own band.
Bloke.
No, he's got his own band he had a band called Mercedes and he used to wear a Mercedes, the emblem, as like a necklace around his neck when he was singing for them. I think his band these days is called Honey. But yeah, when we played Northampton in the second half of the season.
Change that, going from a German car maker to a product of B.
Yeah, a very strange one, isn't it? But yeah, I think I'll get Dan to pick him for the second half of the season. I'm pretty sure he will do. Who else have we got here? Leon McSweeney, Junior Mendes, Ian Morris, Derek Mounfield, Bobby Owen, Andy Priest, Paul Reed, Rob Scott, Alan Smart, Jack Sowerby, Ray Train, Will Varty had a very short spell there as well. Bagno Vieira, Luke Weaver, and Byron Webster. I didn't realise Byron Webster had been there, actually. That surprised me a little bit.
If there was to be an American on this list, it should have been Ray Train.
Really?
What a brilliant name.
It's an incredible name.
I bet the Piatics know someone called Ray Train.
They should do. Right, shall we try and have a think about... Well, we already touched on Northampton's last game. They beat Fleetwood 3-0, by the way. We talked about that earlier. But United then. So injury-wise, a little bit of an update Simo gave today. Some good news. Josh Coyote getting close, isn't he? 2 to 3 weeks away. I heard whispers that they were hoping he'd be back for the Cheltenham game, but it looks like they're being a little bit more cautious, which is the sensible thing to do with a player like that. So hopefully for the Port Vale or the Exeter game, he should be back. But the big news, as you mentioned there, Taylor Charters and Paul Huntington being fit enough to get back in training next week, which I think is a really big plus because having a couple more bodies in those positions is going to really help us.
Definitely. Yeah, it's reinforcement and it takes a bit of pressure off of Simo where he doesn't have to just pick the same 18. He can mix and match a bit, horses for courses type games. So yeah, and also having Ellis back as well just provides a different option.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. I think getting him back in the squad's a real positive. And also, I think there's some good news about Finn back. It looks like he could be back a few weeks earlier than we expected in mid-January, so that's a real big positive. A bit of competition.
He's still with Forest, though. I'm pretty sure he's not quite back with us.
No, he's still a little bit off of that in that sense, but it looks better news there. Owen Moxon, though, we sort of hinted to this earlier. Came off with an injury against Blackburn. He looked like he really had pulled up. And then Simo revealed after the game that essentially he's been playing through with an injury, hasn't he, for quite a while by the sounds of things. And this seems to be basically got to the point where it can't really carry on any longer. And it looks like he's going to be a doubt for this weekend's game.
Yeah, from what Paul Simpson said, major doubt for the game against Northampton. They said that he'd had a scan on his hip and there is damage been done to I don't know if it's muscular or what, but I'd imagine it's probably muscular. But yeah, it's a bit of a, how do I describe this? It could be a good thing for him to be out the squad for a bit and actually recover, because I think playing players through injuries at this stage of the season is a bit stupid. I know we haven't had much other option, but if something like this that's obviously deteriorated to the point where he might be out for some time, at least this weekend, probably. I just think it's probably better with him to stay on the side of caution. But yeah, it'll be a big loss because he even though he's not been playing up to standards, he still offers that threat of he could do something magical.
He's still capable of doing something quickly on the turn, isn't he? And you sometimes need that from players. Formation and selection. What do you go for from this one? This is the real tough one, because I kind of feel like I look at the defence and I think if we're going to go with this back three, I think Ben Barkley's struggling a little bit at the moment. I don't think he's quite finding form. He's a little bit low. Left field suggestion here, I'd put Corey Whelan in there. He's never let us down when he's come in, and I do wonder if maybe he's earned the right to have a start in there just to make us a little bit more solid at the back.
I'd understand that. I'm looking at this from the point of view of, I know the squad is different due to injuries and things like that, but the best we've played all season was when we were playing a 4-3-3 with Mellish and Lavelle at the back. Yeah. Obviously, I think Armour and Robinson at this point are interchangeable. Obviously, Finn on the right, but Josh Emmanuel maybe isn't as defensively sound as Finn back, but he can play that role. And I'd put him in the squad over Jack Ellis, who's just coming back from injury. Yeah. Midfield 3, obviously at the moment it's slim pickings. But
presume Moxon's not fit, basically.
Yeah, it'll probably be McCalmont, Robinson, and then you put Armour at left back maybe. McCalmont, Robinson, McGeoch, and then I'd play Garner through the middle, Gibson on the right, Gibson on the left, Maguire on the right, because that is the best form we've had all season. It's been playing the best football. We've got out of defensive situations much easier. I understand that Northampton are in a good position, but we need to have a bit, especially at home, in home games, we need to make those games, because they're by nature the most winnable games. You're at your home stadium. And do you want to know the last time that we scored first in a game of football, a league game of football?
Burton?
Lincoln. On the 16th of September.
Did Burton take the lead against us? I can't. Bloody hell. Let's go back a bit.
16th of September was the last time that we took a lead in a game. Well, took the lead, went 1-0 up in a game in League One. You can double check that. I'm pretty sure Burton did take the lead. I'm pretty sure Burton did take the lead in that game, and unless my research has failed me, feel free to prove me wrong.
I think you're right.
But we need to go out there and take the initiative, and I think starting with a 5-back and then a midfield of McGeoch and McCalmont, and then starting potentially plunging Garner up front, it just sets us up to be negative and try and get a point from a game, just to try and put points on the board. I think Simo's, like I said, he's a smart guy. What he said after the game, he's probably going to come out and try and fire the crowd up a bit before the game. We need to go out there and try and take the initiative and put them on the back foot and use that home advantage that we've built up over the last year and reinforce it, because it's not quite been as, understandably, not been quite as bouncing as it was. But I think this is a game where we need to try. We can't go out there and look for a point. Northampton are good. They don't. I don't think they have the quality of Blackpool, where if we go out there and try and play with them, and try and play with them in the sense of, standing up to them rather than just hoping for a point. We're giving them too much respect if we do that.
Yeah, I'm just checking there. We've only actually taken the lead 3 times at the start of a game this season, which is Fleetwood, Shrewsbury, and Lincoln. They're the only
Shrewsbury game we won 1-0.
Yeah.
I think I'm right in saying, yeah?
2-0. That was that one.
2-0, sorry, yeah.
It was, Garda got one late on as well.
Yeah. That was, no, I remember now.
Yeah. No, yeah, you're right. Burton did take the lead in that game. It's...
What would you do up front? Because I think that's the most pivotal area. I think the rest of the pitch, because of injury, picks itself. Depending
on what formation you pick. If you pick a back 5, I would go with a back 3-5 of Whelan, Lavelle and Mellish. I'd put my wing backs as being Emmanuel and Armour, and then I'd probably put Robinson into midfield with McCalmont and McGeoch, trying to keep that a bit tight in there, but give maybe McGeoch a bit... No, actually, maybe... I don't know, actually...
Gibson's out of the team unless you want to put him up front.
Yeah, that's the question. Maybe I'd leave out McCalmont for Gibson and I'd put Garner and Maguire up front. He clearly doesn't rate Edmondson at the moment. He's clearly not happy with him. So I'm being realistic in thinking
and he doesn't rate
play
Butterworth either, because Butterworth didn't come on that game.
I think. Look, I would not be amazed if Butterworth ended up leaving in January. If I'm honest, I don't. I think it just hasn't worked at the moment. I think
stuff like that would be smart if you can, especially if you
even
can
a loan
get money
deal
in this
for him,
people. And you can just take something off the wage bill for a bit, and then the summer there might be some suitors if things go well. I think doing stuff like that would be smart, and I think it's something we'll see more of in the future. I mean, I know Corey Whelan's had offers to leave, but he's the one who's turned it down. I don't think it's necessarily been the club who's turned it down. But I think that's something.
I think with him is more a case of location, because it was Colchester that came in for him and he didn't. If it's someone like a Tranmere or a Crew came in for him in January, I wouldn't be surprised.
Happen, but I think I'll be stupid to sell him at this point.
Yeah, I think if we can get a replacement, maybe yes. But I have a feeling when players go, we're not going to get transfer fees for a lot of them. It's just going to be a case of getting a wage off the bill and let them go for free with most of them. But yeah, I think we're basing something on Moxon not playing. So that if that's what it was, I'd go with that. If it's 4-3-3, the difference I would make is I would take Whelan out and I would probably put in McCalmont and put him into midfield and put Gibson on the wing and Maguire. Pretty much the same team you'd pick, I'd go with, I think. To be fair, I just, at the moment, I just don't think we've got any other options, really. And like you said, I think we need to, like I said, he clearly likes Blanche, but I just think at the moment, take him out the firing line. Don't put any more pressure on that and put Maguire in.
To get to fuck. We can't keep playing him, right? We've done you this favour. We've been playing him the whole time. Even the day after he arrived, we started him, admittedly, because we didn't have anyone else. Yeah. But we've done them as much of a favour as we can. He's gone back to London in a couple of weeks, hopefully. I don't want it to sound harsh, because I do think that there is a potential player there. He's just not. I don't think he's suited to the EFL. Definitely, I think that cameo at Derby was a bit of a not a facade, but a bit of a misleading season. Just pick the best team in terms of quality that you can. I don't think he's in that team.
Right, let's do predictions then for this one. What are you going to go for, Adam?
I mean, in fairness, before the Blackpool game, when I was chatting to people and they were asking, how do you think we'd do? I wasn't confident. I am more confident about this game, but I'm going to be still slightly cautious, and I'm going to predict a draw. I'm going to go with a 1-1. I think our defence is capable. We just need to not be penned into our own half for the whole game, and then they can actually have a bit of freedom, which will massively help them. But 1-1 for me.
Who are you going to go for goal?
I am going to go with... I imagine Gibson has to start, so I'm going to go with Gibson.
Okay, Gibson. I think I said 1-1 or 2-2. I can't remember on the Cobblers podcast when I recorded there, but a couple of days ago. And as usual, when I get close to the game, I get more optimistic. I was going to predict a defeat for the Blackpool game just to try and hopefully reverse psychology and we'd get a win, and I'd be happy to not get any points.
What did you predict in the end?
I think I went for a 2-1 win or something stupid like that. Why change the habit of a lifetime? 2-1 win. 2-1 win. Goals from Jack Robinson and Joe Garner. I'm going to go with. Right, let's have Dan's prediction first.
Well, I said that I had a bit of Bolton vibe around Blackpool. Couldn't have got that much more wrong, could I? I'm not the only one, to be honest. But hard-earned 2-1 win this week. Time to get back on track. Simo's outburst has deflected from the players, so for me, they owe him a little bit, from their terrible performance. So we'll go for a 2-1 win. And we'll go for Alfie McCalmont and Joe Garner.
Okay, he thinks Alfie's going to get his first goal this season, making up for the miss at Blackpool, hopefully.
Yeah.
Let's have Mike's predictions now.
I'm going to go for a 2-1 win with goals from Joe Garner and John Mellish.
Well, if Joe Garner scores, all three of us are getting points there. So, God. Yeah, with ever the optimist on this show, I think it's fair to say. Points haven't changed in terms of predictions. So score-wise, 8. I'm on 8, Dan's on 7, Mike's on 2. You still have to get off the mark, Adam, but
Yes,
that's not a surprise because Mike has struggled enough and he's had every game to predict him, so there you go. Right, let's do X-Files section. Plenty to cover this week. It was a busy weekend in terms of goals. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. James Tavernier scored a penalty for Rangers as they beat Dundee 3-1. No surprise there. The one of the top 10 penalty scorers of all time getting on the score sheet. Here's a nice little one. Callum O'Hare, back from a long-term injury, scored a brace for Coventry City in their 2-0 win over Birmingham City. Only his second start since he recovered from the injury. That's a really nice one, isn't it? Because he missed out on a big move to Burnley, they reckon, didn't they? Because Burnley were really keen on him in the summer. But unfortunately, the injury meant that it was never likely to happen, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, he's been injured. I think it was around Christmas of... Yeah, maybe New Year or something. Yeah. New Year this year. But I watched the game. It was really good to see that, because you could see the quality that he had when he was at Carlisle.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of one of those performances. And he's out of contract this at the end of the season, so there's potentially he could be leaving Coventry for free.
Yeah.
But things like that are only going to help his case, not only to stay at Coventry, but potentially get a better move.
Yeah, I imagine Burnley, if they stay up or even if they go down, they might well be back in for him this summer, I suspect. Jerry Yates, he scored for Swansea in their 2-1 win at Rotherham. A big result for them because they're struggling a bit this season, Swansea. Hallam Hope, he scored for Oldham Athletic as they drew 3-3 with Mickleover in the FA Trophy. They eventually won this game 4-2 in penalties. I did see a few Oldham fans tweeting about this, saying what an appalling performance it was from them. So I think they'll be at least pleased to have got something from the game, won't they, Adam? It's always a bit of a... eye-opener is probably the wrong word, but yeah, it probably is. Eye-opener is the right word, actually. These FA Trophy ties, aren't they, for teams that have just come out of the league? I remember we played Redditch in 2004 at Workington, funny enough, during the floods and all that. And it was really like oh wow, this is the level we're at now, isn't it? You've covered games out of the level, obviously, of Marine and that, but it's for those clubs it can be a bit, oh god, this is where we're at.
Well, yeah, you just sort of, it seems like players come into those games with the attitude of, do we have to? Like, come on, do we really have to? And then the other teams prop up for it because it's, it's a big club for them to be playing against. But yeah, obviously Oldham got through that one. But Hallam Hope, he seems to pop up with goals every now and then. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a good. I think Hope's a better player than he was given credit for us. I think in that last season as well, especially, he was particularly impressive, and it's a shame we couldn't have tied him down a bit longer. But there you go. Richie Bennett, he scored for Southport. Yeah, that's right, Southport, as they were beaten 6-1 by Chesterfield in the FA Trophy as well. Yeah, this is sort of jumping ahead here, but yeah, I didn't realise this. One we missed, he signed for Southport on loan, on a 3-month loan from Scunthorpe in November. And for some reason, we just completely missed it in the X-Files section. But interesting, I mean, he's from roundabout that way, isn't he? Manchester, sort of Wiganish, Rochdale, Oldham. So it's probably a sort of decent move for him, really, isn't it, I think? And Scunthorpe have been a basket case for a bit of a while.
Yeah, definitely.
Jack Bridge, he scored another penalty for Southend United. They drew 2-2 with Hampton and Richmond in the FA Trophy, but they were beaten 4-2 in the penalty shootout. So I mean, that's a bit of a giant killing, I suppose, isn't it, in that sense, at that level, I guess?
Yeah, as much as there can be a giant killing in the FA Trophy.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? Tristan Abrahams, he scored a goal for Welling United as they drew 1-1 with Brackley Town in the FA Trophy, and they went on to win that tie 4-3 on penalties. Owen Windsor scored his first goal for Chester in their 2-0 home win over Tamworth in National League North. Joe McKee was on the score sheet for Peterhead as they drew 1-1 with Bonnie Rear Groves. And Zach Clough, one we missed actually last week, he scored a brace for Adelaide United, but they lost 4-3 at MacArthur, which I think is like a suburb of Sydney, I think. I had to look it up before because I was a bit like that. I'd never heard of that before, but I'm sure there's plenty of our listeners who, in fact, Johnny, who contributed to 6 Second Review, he lived out in Australia as well, so I'm sure he'll know that. Into midweek, Tyrese Omotoya. He scored a goal for Forest Green Rovers in their 4-2 win over Scarborough Athletic in the FA Cup. This game was replayed, wasn't it? Because they won the original game, Forest Green, but it turned out they picked a lone player who hadn't got permission to play in the game, had he?
Yeah, which caused a lot of outrage amongst Barnsley fans because they obviously got the chance to replay the game. But what it's done is, I can't remember who Forest Green are now playing in the...
Blackburn.
Because that was a first... Yeah, Blackburn, but that was a first round game, and all the other midweek FA Cup games were second round games.
Yeah.
So now I think Blackburn are going to end up playing
it's
three
Blackpool.
games in six. Or Blackpool, sorry.
Yes.
Are going to end up playing 3 games in 6 days or something like that.
Yeah,
or 7 days.
Yeah,
I think Obertoy's been doing quite well recently for them.
He's chipped in 1 or 2 goals. Yeah, we've mentioned him a few times, definitely. Did he get an own goal in a game as well recently, I think, as well? I think we mentioned him.
He got one against Tranmere.
Yeah.
About a month ago. But he's got, 2 goals and an assist in his last 6.
Well, he's not doing too bad. Maybe he's found his feet a little bit, but he certainly didn't look like he was going to find them for us, did he? Ryan Loft, he scored for Port Vale in their 3-3 draw with Stevenage in the FA Cup. Stevenage actually won that game 4-3 on penalties. Mark Ellis scored the winner for Chorley in their 3-2 win over Buxton. George Waring got a goal and a red card. He scored for Curzon Ashton to give them the lead, and then he was sent off in injury time a minute before they conceded to lose 2-1. This was a mental game. I looked this up. So he obviously scored, I think, earlier in the game. I think the opposition, who they played against, sorry, did I write that down there? I haven't written it down. That was stupid. He scored the goal, and then the opposition, which I'm going to look up now because it's not stupid if I don't actually say this now. Hang on. Curzon Athletic. Curzon Ashton, sorry. It was... Who was it?
Farsley Celtic.
Farsley, that's the one. I don't know why I didn't write that down. So yeah, Farsley Celtic. So basically, Curzon took the lead. Farsley scored on, I think, 90 plus 2 to make it 1-1. George Waring was given a second booking on 90 plus 3. And then on 90 plus 4, Farsley got the winner. That would have been something. Imagine if you lost that game early and you find out you missed 2 goals on a red card. You'd be fuming, wouldn't you? Absolutely raging.
I've just Googled Curzon Ashton here. The Google reviews of Curzon Ashton as a football club are brilliant. It's just about the food they serve. Some guy said he enjoyed his curry and chips, a nice little bacon butty. Nothing about how good the football team is.
Yeah, probably for the best, isn't it? Sometimes with these things. And then finally another one, midweek one. Stephen Rigg and David Simonton, they score for Workington in their dramatic 3-3 draw with Worksop Town. A big result for the Workington.
They've been having a lot of high-scoring games because they drew 4-4 Marine as well, and a 3-3 Worksop.
They're adapting fairly well to life in that division, I think.
I think
they've been unlucky. They've had a lot of games called off, haven't they? So I think they're a little bit behind in terms of fixtures. I think they've played their first home game. That game was their first home game in over a month, I think, wasn't it? I think against Worksop. So it's
bad luck if that's the case.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a couple more in the other section. Chris Twadek and John O'Sullivan have been released by Bohemians at the end of the League of Ireland season, and it's not kind of like it's not something that's actually happened, but it's a bit of like a rumour thing. I think it's worth talking about this one. It's Jared Branthwaite. He really is setting the world alight, isn't he, in the Premier League? And Gareth Southgate was watching him at the weekend for the game against Chelsea. Must have been quite impressed with him, you'd think. Left side of centre back, you never know. And the rumour is, because Tottenham have shown interest in him, we know Man United have, and a lot of clubs have shown interest in him, that Everton apparently have slapped a £75 million asking price on his shoulders. I mean, I'd be happy if they got that for him.
All I'll say is that's not enough. Get it up to another figure. What would it be? 9 figures. 100 million.
Yeah, 9 figures. Get him in 9-figure fee. That's what we want to see. You know what? There's every chance he could get called up to that England squad in March,
Definitely.
The Euros one. And if he keeps going the way he is, and if that happens,
he's been really good. He's been really, really good. He's in that team. He's not going to have the chance to show because he was originally a left back. Back when I was in. Because he's my school year, when people who I know who were going through that sort of selection phase at Carlisle, whether they got kept on or not, Charlie Birch, if you remember that name, obviously Mark Birch's son, played the same position as Jared. They were both left backs, and he was a bit sort of apprehensive as to whether he was going to get kept on because Jared played his position and was so good. Yeah. So he's got really good on the ball ability as well, but he doesn't have the chance to show it for Everton. But his just general defending is so good, and it's great to see. Obviously, from a personal point of view, because we want him to do well, but also Get that money, baby.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, look, there's all kinds of rumours about how much the percentage is. Is it a 10%? Is it a 15? Is it a 20? I mean, if it's 20%, 15 million, bloody. I mean, the Piatics won't have to put their hand in their pocket for ages. That'd be brilliant.
They'll go.
Fund
All right,
off
we've
that.
done our job.
We could have the Jared Brunthwaite Superdome built on the site of Brunton Park. That's what we'll be following. I think that's pretty much covered it then, Adam. It's been quite a long one this week. We've had quite a lot to cover in the Blackpool section, didn't we, in terms of issues.
It's just been a venting session just to get everything off.
Yeah.
We could be in the same position this time next week, but
I feel like there's going to be a bit of positivity at the weekend. I kind of, even, the team's limited to what we can pick, but knowing that you got Charters and Thundington back for the Cheltenham game, hopefully, you got Ellis coming back as well, you got 3 extra bodies. There's a bit of competition for the bench now. That's what we want to see over the next few games, and you think, right, he's not just looking at, I've only got 18 in, and actually the starting lineup pretty much picks itself. You can look and go, right, I've got an experienced man in Huntington coming. I've got a different kind of midfielder in, Charters can come in for Moxon, and they're not exactly the same player, but he can do a similar-ish job, so that's what you're kind of hoping for, isn't it, over the next few weeks, at the very least.
That Exeter game, I think, especially because Coyote will hopefully be back that time with some new signings, that could be a real big point in the season, because if anything's going to spark a second half of the season reaction, it's probably going to be that.
As important of a game as it is, I am not going to Exeter again.
Not a chance. I say that I'm flying to Bournemouth on Monday rather.
Oh. Right. What's that fun for? Just a general trip?
I'm going down to see my girlfriend because she's working down there over Christmas.
Very nice, very nice. That's a trip and a half, though. That Bournemouth all the way down there, but there you go. Adam, thanks very much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries. Good to get it all off my chest and forget about it.
Yes, so we're going to be back next week with a review of the Northampton game. I think I'm going to have a look at what we do in terms of previewing the Christmas games. We might preview the Cheltenham and the Fleetwood games together, just because I'm going to be back in Cumbria for Christmas, so I might not be able to do anything in between the two. So we'll try and do those two together, and then maybe review them, and then look ahead to the Wigan game. And what we're going to try and maybe look at, we'll maybe do a review of 2023 at some points as well, looking back on month by month from what the year's been like, because it's been eventful to say the least as a Carlisle fan, hasn't it? When you look back at it, a lot has been crammed into the last 12 months, and plenty of, because the thing is, everyone's a bit negative right now. There's been so much positive stuff from this year, so we have to look back at that and reflect. But yeah, we'll be back early next week. Or maybe middle of next week, probably, to look back on the Northampton game and look ahead to the Christmas games. But other than that, just one last thing to say, and that's up the Blues.
Up the Blues.
Hello, you're listening to the Brunton Bugle, the number one place to get your Kyanite fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Adam Tiffin.
No winter wonderland on the Fylde coast for United as they slump to a miserable defeat in the rain at Blackpool. We look back on a dreadful away day for the Blues before previewing another huge clash this weekend as Brunton Park travel to Brunton Park.
With a pass so true to Balderstone.
That was a complete cock-up, wasn't it?
That's the first time, to be fair. It's the first time since I've been on that you've messed it up.
Problem was, I wasn't on the intro bit, and I was scrolling up to get to it, and I rushed through it as a result. Right, let's have another go at that.
To be fair, I was reading through it, I was like, that's a horrible one to read through.